6:02. We will now call to order our regular meeting of Aylesford City Council for today, January 4th. We'll begin with the invocation from Pastor McKenna of the Bridge, followed by Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilmember Giroux.
Can we do the roll call?
What's that?
Roll call?
Yeah. We can do that. We can do it now. We can do it after we pledge.
Okay. Your pleasure.
Let's have the invocation and pledge first.
Always good to be with all of you. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, I'm so thankful for tonight, Lord, for moments like this, that we pause, we recognize you, Lord God, and we invite you into this meeting tonight. And Lord, I give thanks for our mayor and our city, Lord God, the officials, our council, Lord God. So many amazing people in this community, from our first responders and how they've been tasked so much lately, Lord God, to our school teachers and administrators. We just give you thanks for all of them. And we ask that you watch over them, you protect them, you keep them safe, their families as well. Lord, I pray that you would bless them, Lord God, over and abundantly. And Lord, I'm thankful that you are watching over this city, that you're keeping it safe. We pray for families in this city, Lord God. We pray for healthy kids and whole marriages, Lord. And Lord, that you would be honored in all that we do. And so, Lord, tonight as our city meets, that you would just go before them. Lord, as you tell us to do, to ask for wisdom. I pray that you would give them wisdom and discernment, Lord God. And we pray this in your name. Amen. To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor McKenna and Councilmember Giroux. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Happy to. Councilmember Keldorf.
Here.
Councilmember Giroux.
Here.
Councilmember Boyles. Absent. Mayor Pro Tem Baldino.
Here.
And Mayor Pimentel.
Here. Councilmember Boyles is traveling. We have one special presentation today. Councilmember Keldorf, would you read to us about Black History Month, please?
I would love to. It's a proclamation from the city of El Segundo, whereas Black History Month affords special opportunity to become more knowledgeable about Black heritage and to honor the many Black leaders who have contributed to the progress of our nation. And whereas Dr. Woodson initiated Black History Week, February 12, 1926, and for many years, the second week of February, chosen so as to coincide with the birthdays of Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln, was celebrated by African Americans in the United States. And whereas in 1976, as part of the nation's bicentennial Black History Week, was expanded and became established as Black History Month, and is now celebrated all over North America. And whereas such knowledge can strengthen the insight of all of our citizens regarding the issues of human rights, the great strides that have been made in the crusade to eliminate the barriers of equality of minority groups, and the continuing struggle against racial discrimination and unconscious bias. Now, therefore, the mayor and members of the City Council of the City of El Segundo, California, do hereby proclaim the month of February 2025 Black History Month, and urge all citizens to join together in making this period of rededication to the principles of justice and equality for all people. And accepting the Black History Month proclamation is our very own El Segundo Unified School District Board member and all-around wonderful person, Daima Wheaton.
First off, Madam Clerk Truax, Council Members Keldorf and Giroux, Mayor Pro Tem Baldino, and our Mayor Pimentel, along with our executive team. I stand before you today, Daima Wheaton, a member of the school board and a resident of El Segundo, an 11-year resident, noting that I am fully aware that I must wait the next 9 years to get to my 20 years to apply for my lifer status. All jokes aside, I am here today with my loving husband, Andrew Wheaton, and we selected El Segundo 11 years ago as our home, not only for our kids to be in a wonderful school district, but also to be in this town. And with that, we understand that I'm looking at great leaders. You all represent the very essence of what this community means. It's togetherness. Regardless of what happens nationally, the fact that we are here and we are celebrating Black History Month lets me know one thing, and one thing in particular, that we are definitely a community. And not just the word community as a tagline. We live it, we embrace it, and it is the essence of who we are. And I thank you because I stand here today as a member of the community who feels seen. And that's important because not only do I contribute, but I also feel like this community contributes to me. It has given me so much, and I am incredibly grateful for it. So I am honored to accept this proclamation recognizing Black History Month on this day, February 4th, 2025. It serves as a symbol of hope, one that celebrates community, a community that sees its residents, and a community that embraces them. I would like to leave you today with two quotes, one by our beloved Dr. Martin Luther King. We may have all come on different ships, but we're in the same boat now. And lastly, by Maddie Tupanik, a 13-year-old who at his death was very instrumental in giving us words of wisdom at that youth. And he said, unity is strength. When there is teamwork and collaboration, wonderful things can be achieved. And this is evident right here in our community, how we continue to achieve wonderful things together, united. And lastly, I do want to say a quick word to Mashia. Thank you so much for reaching out to me. She reached out to me, and that one email made me feel absolutely amazing. And all she asked was, can you accept this proclamation? And I thought we were in a time where maybe we weren't going to do that anymore. So I really say to each of you, to you, to you, to you, and to you, collectively, thank you.
All right, a couple of photos, everybody. Oh, yes, please. Here we go. A couple of photos here. 1, 2, one more. Very good. Thank you so much.
All right, now we will open the floor for public comment. Madam Clerk, how many do we have?
This evening, we have 10 people who would like to speak.
All right, we will speak for 2 minutes each to get us to our 20-minute mark. Who's first?
Jack Ashworth, please.
Hello. I'm going to try to read it, so I will go fast enough. My name is Jack Ashworth. I've lived in town for 35 years. First time I've ever been before the council. I represent an organization called the Settlement Project, which seeks to end the differences that divide our country and rebuild a healthy American culture. Unfortunately, our country is divided. This became apparent after the George Floyd incident and the rise of the BLM movement, when a new ideology, an offspring of Marxism, was introduced in America, which is called DEI, or wokeism. Beginning in 2020, DEI and its policies became integrated in every aspect of our society, including schools, government, business, and religious institutions. In 3 minutes, I cannot convince you of the divisiveness and the disregard for the family structure coming from this ideology, but I have brought you a book, a small book, which you could read. It's called Wokeism, Ideology, Critique, and Counterproposal. The words diversity, in this book, it's important for the City Council as well as local schools who have established DEI committees and social justice policies, which, although with good intentions, will not solve problems or improve the well-being of our community. The words diversity and inclusion sound supportive and positive, but what is it really all about? It is rooted in the ideology of critical theory that first became popular on our universities. Diversity and inclusion, from this perspective, refers to inequities and the affirmation of marginalized groups, including people of color and the LGBT community, rather than inclusion and diversity of viewpoints. The city government, consider the city government's promotion of the United Against Hate Week.
Mr. Ashworth, you have
This
one
program
additional minute.
calls for
Sorry, I
the
did math for
resistance
Marines.
to
It's 3 minutes each,
racism,
3 minutes each.
bigotry, homophobia, and anti-Semitism. That's very good, but it also expands the definition of hate. Hate can be defined as using someone's preferred pronouns incorrectly or claiming that there are only two sexes. The Government Alliance of Race and Equity guidelines in your website say that it reviews the policies of city government and schools, and according to their guidelines, systematic racism must be acknowledged because, quote, racial inequities are deeply rooted and exist across all indicators for success, including education, criminal justice, and jobs. I am here to suggest that we replace the DEI committee with a DOI committee. A DOI committee can help us fulfill the ideals of the Declaration of Independence. Because of the Declaration, America has become the most diverse, fair, and desirable country in the world. The Declaration of Independence
Mr.
proclaims
Ashworth,
we
you're
are
at time.
free,
Sir,
equal, and
sir, please,
have
you're at time.
God-given and
Thank you. You're at time, sir, please. Thank you for your comments, Mr. Ashworth. Please, to the clerk, please. You can also provide that to the clerk as well. Everyone, I get it. It's 30 minutes for public comment, divided by 10 is 3 minutes each. Sorry for that brief math for Marines moment. Next up. That's right, which is on math. Mr. Pickhaver, the floor is yours. Again, 3 minutes each.
All right. Good evening, Council. My name is John Pickhaver. The following are quotes from members of the DEI committee at the tail end of a 3-hour meeting back in July of 2023. My frustration is continuing to grow with the lack of process. The thing I need is clarification on the expectation of the council for the committee. It's almost kind of like we're being set up a little bit. Just like everybody else, I am a little bit confused. I could have pulled quotes from several DEI committee meetings to highlight the frustration of members constantly bewildered by the council's lack of genuine support for their work. I could have revisited meetings from the first 2 years when members were constantly stonewalled by a fellow member who argued systemic racism did not exist. A member who, by the way, did not hide his views on his application, yet the council still appointed him anyway over 60 other applicants. I could have pulled equally frustrating quotes from last summer when the committee once again faced an anti-DEI committee member, this time someone who argued that the committee should not support the LGBTQ+ community because he was there to represent those in town who opposed it. This was yet another anti-DEI individual appointed to the DEI committee by the council. So how do people so fundamentally opposed to the mission of the DEI committee end up on it? Here's your answer. Council put them there, deliberately arguing that opposition to DEI deserved a seat at the table. We need all voices, is what the council said then. But it's a different council now, and that gives me some hope tonight. Now back to why I chose the quotes from a 2023 meeting. Then the committee was discussing their work plan, which included hosting a community briefing with the police chief instituting a DEI award for a community member, and holding a panel discussion with an El Segundo-based company on a DEI topic. If that sounds familiar, it should. These same items are now part of the proposed 2025 work plan, meaning what they planned in 2023 still hasn't been prioritized in any way by the council. In fact, nearly all of their past recommendations remain unaddressed, not to mention the fact that the committee hasn't had a full roster of members in nearly 3 years. This despite a pool of over 70 applicants on hand. To me, the committee's greatest accomplishment is their resilience, staying committed to their mission and pushing forward despite the council's inaction. But it could be and should be so much more. The truth is, past councils haven't done anything meaningful for the DEI committee except to allow it to survive in a perpetual state of neglect so the city can pat itself on the back for checking the DEI box and claiming it as a priority in its top 5 strategic goals. Council, it's time to commit to the city's own DEI goals by implementing this work plan, supporting these dedicated committee members, and truly investing in their mission to make a meaningful difference in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pickhaver.
Anya Goldstein, please.
Ms. Goldstein.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. My name is Anya Goldstein, and I'm a member of the Sweat Equity Alliance here in town. At the last council meeting, Councilmember Giroux suggested that 2/3 of DEI committee meetings should be eliminated. Mayor Pimentel agreed by saying that would be a very good idea. The council has not recommended this drastic reduction for any other committee. DEI is the only committee on the chopping block. This is on the heels of anti-discrimination efforts being attacked federally and jettisoned by major corporations to curry favor with the Trump administration. Are we supposed to believe that this suggestion by our council is a coincidence? Given the public outcry at the attempts to gut DEI, I hope and expect that you will backpedal here today and say you are fully in support of the DEI committee. But the real question is, why was this suggestion put forward in the first place? We've heard 2 cover stories so far, and neither hold water. First, Councilmember Giroux, you justified this proposal by saying the committee was struggling to find enough things on their agendas to warrant monthly meetings. Yet, when the committee was discussing the nearly identical work plan in 2023, you suggested the group scale it back to have a more manageable workload. Have a top 3 and a backup 3, you said, and as one gets complete, move the other up. So does the committee have too much to do or too little to do? The only consistency is your repeated efforts to scale back DEI efforts, then by cutting down their work plan, and now by cutting down their time to get things done. So there goes that excuse. Next, Mayor Pimentel said the issue was a difficulty getting a quorum, but the records show that the committee met 10 out of 12 times in 2024, far more than the 4 times now being proposed. As to the times the committee has had problems getting a quorum, it was because of vacancies or because the council has chosen people without the bandwidth to attend. Both of those problems rest at the council's feet. There are plenty of applicants who actually have the bandwidth and the desire to do the work of the committee. Another excuse refuted by the evidence. So my question to Mayor Pimentel and Councilmember Giroux is, whatever you'll say in response to public comments here today, respectfully, why should we believe you? It's time to show us by your actions that you support diversity, equity, and inclusion. We're tired of the cover stories. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Goldstein.
Wallace McGuire.
Good evening, Council. My name is Wallace McGuire. I am a resident of El Segundo, and I am also a member of the LGBT community. I just wanted to come up here and say that I would fully support keeping the meetings as they are. I feel like it's an extremely important committee to have going, and I would really hate for things to get sidelined by reducing the amount of meetings. Thank you.
Thank you.
Keith Puckett.
Mr. Puckett.
Is it Puckett? Puckett, thank you.
I stand before you tonight to discuss the DEI committee. The decision to gut the DEI committee is not about efficiency. It's about elimination. It is about silencing voices that have fought too long and too hard to be heard. It is about rolling back progress under the false pretense that the work is done, when in reality, the work has barely begun. Councilmember Giroux claims the committee is struggling to find work to do. But I ask you, how many of the committee members have you spoken with? The committee members we spoke with are not in agreement with you. The very suggestion this committee lacks purpose is an insult, not just to those who serve on it, but to every marginalized person in this city who has been ignored, dismissed, or made to feel invisible. Now, more than any time since its formation, does the minority community of El Segundo need the DEI committee. If you reduce these meetings, you are not making DEI stronger. You are weakening it. You are taking away from the space where real work is done, where accountability is enforced, and where policies are challenged, and where this city is forced to reckon with the fact that inclusion is not an event, it is a commitment. The forces pushing this rollback do not want progress. They want silence. They want comfort. They want things to return to an era where power was concentrated in the hands of the few and where struggles of the many were deemed unimportant. Some of the council have gone out of their way to tank the committee since its inception. What other committee has people on it who are against what the committee stands for? Are there anti-environment people on the environmental committee? How about anyone against arts and culture on the arts and culture committee? No, they're not. But city council has put multiple people who do not believe in DEI on the DEI committee. We will not stand by while you strip away the very infrastructure meant to make this city a place where all people, regardless of race, background, gender, sexual orientation, or belief, can belong. El Segundo has declared diversity, equity, inclusion as one of its top 5 strategic goals, yet the DEI committee operates with no dedicated budget, forcing its members to personally fund event supplies and initiatives that directly benefit this community. This is a contradiction, speaks volumes. A true commitment to DEI cannot exist without investment, without resources. It is nothing more than an empty promise. While other city committees receive financial support to carry out their work, DEI is being systematically starved, and now with the proposed rollback of meetings, even the ability to function is under attack. If DEI is truly a priority, it must be treated as such, not just in words, but in action, with funding, resources, and an unwavering commitment to progress. Otherwise, this council is not fostering inclusion, it is quietly dismantling it. The question before you is simple. Will you be the council that stands on the side of justice, or will history remember you as the ones who dismantle it? Will council make the affirmative statement tonight and commit to implementing the very reasonable plan and DEI committee has put forth? Or will you guys dismantle it on the day you guys did the proclamation for Black History Month?
Thank you, Mr. Puckett.
Michelle Tody Leach.
Hi. Good evening, council members. I love that Black History Month proclamation was just announced, and especially while the federal agencies are pausing Black History Month activities across the nation. That's a city that I'm proud to live and work in. And paraphrasing Dima's quote, you know, with teamwork and collaboration, we can do anything together. I don't know all the nuances behind the proposal to reduce the DEI committee's meetings from 12 to 4, but I do know that this decision comes at a very polarizing time in our nation. And just because this message is coming from national leaders and tech bros doesn't make it right. In the face of this division, I believe it's more important than ever that El Segundo doubles down on its commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. You are all smart business people, and I believe that we can find solutions to any perceived problems relating to how the committee is operating or the number of members or whatever the issues that would preclude it to make it beneficial to go down to 4. Like, I think we can solve those problems. You know, not too long ago in 2020, when students from El Segundo organized a Black Lives March down Main Street, I think there was like 300 people that marched, and it was beautiful. I still get chills. I actually saw photos from today, and I got chills seeing it. There were tensions all across the country, including here in El Segundo, and we literally heard community members stand up or sit down in front of City Hall and say that they did not feel safe in our community and schools. And councilmen, well, at the time I think it was Mayor Drew Boyles, and other community leaders said to these kids and these community members that El Segundo is a welcoming place, and we're going to make sure that you feel included and safe, and that this is a place for everyone, and that you were going to make it a priority that you support the growing, diverse, and equitable community where everyone feels included and safe. Nobody wants to go back to that time. I and many in this community want this committee to thrive. We want it to keep helping our community navigate the challenges of our most vulnerable populations, and in a way that strengthens all of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Christina Vasquez.
Hello, esteemed council. My name is Christina Vasquez Fajardo. I'm a current resident of El Segundo since 2004 and former appointed member of the DEI committee, serving proudly from 2020 to 2023. When I read the proposed recommendation 9.3 to change the DEI bylaws to reduce monthly committee meetings to quarterly, my heart sank. It was the creation of the DEI committee in 2020 by City Council that actually made me, Christina, feel seen and heard for the first time since my family moved here in 2004 from El Segundo and Paramount. Imagine what it feels like to be a first-generation Mexican-American, daughter of immigrants, a neurodivergent, to have not felt valued or accepted as part of the El Segundo community, even though I had lived here for almost 2 decades. It was the creation of the DEI committee that first caught my attention, that City Council actually cares about me. They care, you care about the adversity and experience I faced as a Mexican American, someone who is part of your community and has been here for a really long time. And how wonderful it would be that my still small voice could actually help affect change in some way, that maybe my experiences and my time serving on the committee could help someone else feel seen and heard and known. I would never have had the courage to come here tonight if it not had been for the fact that I actually feel included now. And that is thanks to the City Council for the creation of the DEI and for the members of the DEI who serve and dedicate their time to help make our community more inclusive. It was my honor to serve as one of the inaugural members for 2.5 years, and there's still so much work to be done in our community. I know firsthand, being part of the community, how much effort, how much dedication, how much passion it takes to actually move the needle when it comes to city and city government. In 2022 and 2023, our committee made dozens of recommendations within the 4 subcommittee reports that are posted on the city's website for public consumption. And while I no longer serve on the committee, it is my hope as a valued committee member or community member that some of those previous recommendations and future recommendations come to fruition. Do you still see me? Thank you.
Thank you.
Kelly Stewart.
Hi, I'm Kelly Stewart. I'm actually reading a statement from Neil Cadman because he couldn't be here today. While I know most of our city council members are of the current ruling party, what I want to hear is the city of El Segundo shall celebrate and protect the rich diversity that now makes up our city. From residents, businesses, and our schools, everyone in between that use our businesses, stay in our hotels, etc. We view all as equal and will protect all stakeholders against hatred and perceived blame for economic issues. Our city has a very dark past with regards to race relations and inclusion, and such past shall be recognized, accepted, and never happen again. I also want a dedication to stand up and support our school district against ICE raids, because we do have dreamers and children from families with what is being deemed illegal occupation in our schools. Those children and families are as important as every other child and need our support and protection. Pardon me, I have a cold. I need to know that our schools and city will use a school district in Chicago as an example that did not allow unauthorized access into our schools by those carrying out a policy of hate in an unconstitutional manner. I am confident our schools will not be targeted because we are a high socioeconomic community district, which makes the targeting of inner city and lower socioeconomic communities all the more sinister. I truly wonder if our city would make such a statement or even agrees with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stewart.
Genesis Puckett.
Hi, my name is Genesis Puckett. I'm an El Segundo resident of 6 years and mother of 3. Obviously all children of color, one who's part of the LGBTQ plus community and one who's autistic, my baby, who's here with me today. I'm also the former vice chair of the DEI committee and would like to respond to the suggestion of reducing the monthly meetings down to quarterly. I can't for the life of me understand how this would be helpful. During my time on the committee, we put in tremendous effort to gather input from residents, visitors, and employees and to research best practices to create our DEI work plan. We had so many important recommendations that were not put into the work plan in an effort to make the workload manageable. And of the ones we did include, many of them have not been implemented. We live in a community where my son, my 16-year-old son, who's a junior at El Segundo High School, showed me a video of one of his white classmates saying the N-word in front of him for $1, while all of the other boys who were standing there were staring at my son, daring him to react. Like, that's what my kids deal with at school. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done. If the problem is attendance, I ask that the council or the committee enact the rule that allows the committee to call for the removal of any committee member that misses more than 3 meetings in a calendar year. The most egregious absences are from the school board members that you have chose to saddle the committee with. There are others in this community that want to be involved and have the bandwidth to show up. But if the rationale is that the committee doesn't have enough work to do, then I call BS. The only reason the committee doesn't have enough can't do enough is because they are not supported enough by the city. I believe in this committee and the important work that it's capable of doing. And I want to make it clear that the only reason I did not reapply at the end of my term is because my husband and I took in 2 foster children less than 48 hours after returning from our honeymoon. We took in 2 teenage girls who live and go to school here in the community through an emergency placement, who would otherwise have been sent to a group home in Lancaster had we not intervened. I had to focus on the overwhelming process of becoming a foster parent, so I stepped aside and I gave my seat to someone who could give the committee the time and the energy that it deserved. Anyone else who's not able to show up, we understand. You have others. There's so many competing priorities, but they need to step aside for someone who does have the time and energy. And then nothing short of having something this dramatic in my life would have made me leave the committee. The committee needs monthly meetings, as this is the only time the full group can speak or approve, or the only time that the full group can meet or approve items to be sent for council approval. Quarterly meetings would be a hindrance to progress. The DEI committee and initiative deserve to actually get all of the support that council claims to give it when selling El Segundo to nearby corporations. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Puckett.
Our final speaker this evening will be Robert Coran.
My name is Robert Coran. I live on 700 block of Lomita Street. I moved to El Segundo in December of 1990, so almost 35 years ago. I have 3 grown adults, all graduated from El Segundo school system. My wife and I ran our own business from our home for 17 years, which we recently sold in 2020. I've always been an advocate of giving back to the community. Our company was a corporate donor for the Ed Foundation for many years. I have been a Little League coach, volunteer at St. Anthony's Church and School before it was shuttered. I was in charge of over 100 volunteers during the APP pickleball tournament a few years back. I'm an active Knights of Columbus member, El Segundo Run for Education volunteer, and my wife and I financially support many other charities. I am also the Neighborhood Watch block captain for the 700 block of Lomita, and I've played basketball with Chris. Why do I tell you this? Back in 2017, while attending the Community Police Academy, CPA Class 6, I learned so much about the different aspects of policing. There were 3 or 4 El Segundo volunteer police attending with us, one of them being Dick Wyckoff. My conversations with him about the program had me excited to join when the time was right for me. Over the next few years, I made it a point to stop and talk to many of the volunteers as I saw them at different events patrolling the streets. They all had positive things to say and were excited to have someone a bit younger on the team. So in January of 2024, I submitted my volunteer application to the ESVP program. I hosted a neighborhood watch meeting at my house, and all my neighbors were excited that I had applied. They all said I would be great. Serena suggested I take a ride along, so I rode with Maurice for a couple of hours, and it confirmed that I definitely can see myself doing this. Because of the hustle and bustle and everything on Sergeant Chavez's plate, the oral interview didn't take place until August of 2024. I have never been in law enforcement and was more than a little nervous and unprepared for what questions would be thrown at me. I would like to read to you the letter I received from Sergeant Chavez on February 1st. Good evening, Mr. Curran. I thank you for your patience and understanding while waiting for the response on a decision to process your interview results for the position of El Segundo Police Volunteer. As you know, it is the department's priority to provide the city of El Segundo and its residents with the best service and safety. I have been focusing all my efforts and time and the department's resources on hiring police officers and support staff in an effort to strengthen public safety. In doing so, it has temporarily taken my attention away from other positions, such as the position of El Segundo Police Volunteer, and I apologize for that. I have reviewed the responses you provided during the oral interviews and decided not to recommend you. I need 30 more seconds.
Mr.
Not
Curran,
to recommend you.
We're cutting everybody at 3 minutes, Mr. Curran. You can submit that to the clerk as well, though. I think we received it as well via email. Yes, sir. Thank you very much. To the clerk, please. Anyone further, Madam Clerk?
No, that is it.
Any council comments?
Yes.
Councilmember Giroux.
I have several, as a matter of fact. The first and foremost is that it is a little frustrating to constantly have narratives being thrown at you that are not true. So I'm going to point out some of the ones that were brought up tonight. Number one, I would ask anybody to count for me how many DEI committees there are in cities in LA County. Take you, I think, 2 fingers, LA City and El Segundo. Okay, and there's a South Bay Coalition Against Hate, which we are part of now. Actually, if I'm not mistaken, we hold maybe a quarterly or at least one meeting, if not more meetings in the city for that entity, correct? Our DEI is an advisory committee that is explained during every interview, is explained during every process, that is explained in the bylaws. It's an advisory committee. The idea of the committee is to do an internal audit on the city to see what we could do better. City government, what we can do better from a policy perspective. That's what the job is and has always been. We are not on a federal or national DEI platform. We don't follow. We're not looking. We're not paying attention to what goes on in Washington. I understand there's a lot going on right now. However, here, everything I mention here or talk about here has to do with here. That's it. There's no other, skeleton in the closet waiting to pop out. There's no ulterior motive. A couple things that were brought up about committees. Mr. Pickhaver brought up the fact that we are understaffed on the amount of people we have as members. I will tell you, I don't know the exact number, Ali, I don't know if you came up with it, but from the inception of this committee, there have been more people appointed to this committee, I believe, than all other committees combined. Now, it might be, we lost some really, really good people because they moved out or moved in different cities and things like that. So it wasn't that they left for nefarious or bad reasons, but we are constantly, I'm not talking now, you had your time. So we have been trying to fill this committee. We have been dedicated to filling this committee. So that is a false narrative. Ms. Goldstein brought up the fact that this is the only committee that's on a quarterly meeting cycle. It's not true. City School Board is now going on to quarterly. Investment Advisory Committee is on quarterly. Capital Improvement Committee is on quarterly. The suggestion I made was, and if you read it, it says to discuss and possibly approve amending is what the language states. What I like to do is have conversations on the dais, not behind closed doors so nobody can see them. So I bring things up so that they get put on an agenda so that we can talk about it, so that you will get the impression or the input from everyone up here, not just me. You'll hear it from everybody. So that is one of the reasons why I do it. Mistake I made, yes, Christabel, I should have told you I was going to do this, but in the end, I would have done it anyway. I would have brought it up so that we can have the discussion. So I apologize for that. It's not a blindsided you. I did not mean to do that. Okay, it just kind of came up while it was happening. All right. So in the end, when we have this discussion, it's going to be about, okay, what is a new work plan? Is there enough work? If the committee feels that they want to stay on point and do these things, fantastic. But guess what? We get an opportunity to hear it, we get an opportunity to comment on it, and everybody gets a chance to see it, and then it's recorded. So this is going to come up. You're going to hear about it all now. But some of these narratives that keep getting thrown out, just winding yourselves up over federal issues that are, you're conflating with local. You're just assuming that these things are happening. I have the right as an elected official to bring up things that I feel should be discussed on the dais with my colleagues. I don't apologize for that, and I never will apologize for that. I've been up here 4.5 years. I'm outspoken. People know that. I may put my foot in my mouth a few hundred times. That's going to happen too. But I'm honest about what I say, and I'm direct, and I don't lie about it. So we're going to have this discussion. You can make your decisions based on that afterwards, but on those particular things. And also, the idea that we are somehow trying to gut DEI is ludicrous. Every action we have taken up here, I've been the liaison for that committee for 4.5 years. We've fought to keep that thing on. Believe me when I tell you, there is an overwhelming amount of people in this city who do not want this committee and never have wanted this. So if you think I get emails from you, imagine how many I get from everybody else. I don't listen to that because I think this is the right thing to do for the city, and we fought for it from the beginning. I was part of the council that started this, and the idea was, how do we do it so that it stays on forever? That was the idea. So all this noise is just that. It's noise. Christabel, I look forward to your presentation.
City Manager, do you have any comment or any response to any public comment, specifically item 10? I know that's a follow-up on a personnel matter, so that maybe that
Yeah,
might be
the only comment on item 10 is I have not seen the letter, but I will get that from the clerk.
Very well. Any other council responses?
Yeah, I just want to make a statement that I understand the concern about the chaos that's going on at the federal level. But I want to remind everybody that we are your neighbors. We are your Little League assistant coaches. We are people who, like you, love this town because of what it is, and it's a community where people support each other. And if that horrible fire didn't show me people turning out for strangers, I just want you to rest assured that everyone is welcome in El Segundo. In my opinion, there's no better town in the world to raise a family. And I like to say I wasn't lucky enough to be born here, but I was smart enough to move here, and I'm proud of the family I raised, and it was raised by members of this community, from the teachers and the coaches. And so I believe it is my job to make sure that whoever family moves to this town has the same opportunities and the same benefits of getting to raise your family here in El Segundo, where people care about each other, people show up for one another. So I appreciate the emails. I love people coming to make public comments. I enjoy when there's conflicting public ideas. But I also like that we can have conversations, we can disagree, but we can all try to find out what we think is best for El Segundo. And that is all anyone's trying to do up here. So thank you again for your comments. Thank you for your concerns.
All right.
Sure. I don't want to get into too much. I know this is on our agenda, so we're going to have,
Item
I think,
9.
a meaty conversation about the work plan that DEI is proposing for this upcoming year. I did just want to say I'm the newly appointed City Council liaison to the DEI. I asked for that. I'm thrilled to be doing it. No part of me asked to do that so that I could dismantle DEI. I don't know, a few years ago, you may recall, I got myself in a bit of a spot for advocating very loudly for the Eagle Promise, which is what our school district does so brilliantly, that says we stand up against hate, we support our cultural differences and diversity, and I very much see us embracing that at the council level, at the city level. I do want to echo what my fellow council members are saying, that I am just requesting in this moment a bit of grace and separation. I understand from a timing perspective, there's a lot of chaos going on at the federal level. And I ran for city council because I like to talk about El Segundo issues. I do genuinely believe that if we can't do it here, we're in a lot of trouble. So I'm just going to focus on figuring out how to do it here. And I do think that we are on the same page, on the same direction, at least in terms of the representation that you have up here, of really wanting to support inclusion, equity, diversity in the city of El Segundo. So maybe if we could just approach the agenda item that's coming up from that lens, we'll get to some really good solutions. Thank you so much for showing up today.
Thank you, Councilmember Keldorf. All right, item A, can I have a motion to read all ordinances and resolutions on the agenda by title only?
So moved.
Baldino will second.
That's all in favor? Aye. It's Giroux and Baldino on the second. All right, consent calendar. Do we have any pulls?
None for me.
All right, I'll take a motion to approve.
So moved.
Baldino will second.
Baldino second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's another Giroux and Baldino.
You're moving too fast. I'm new at this.
I know. We're down to item 8, our public hearing. This is a time and place here to fixed for a public hearing. City Clerk, was proper notice given for the hearing in a timely manner?
Public notice was given in a timely manner.
All right. City Clerk, has any written communication been received regarding this public hearing?
No communication has been received.
Right, the public hearing is now open. Mr. George will make a presentation on the first reading of zone text amendment regarding right-of-way dedication and fees,
Thank you, Mayor.
ADUs and fees, and certain public notification requirements.
Yes, Paul Samaras from Community Development will make that presentation.
Mr. Samaras, the floor is yours.
Mayor Pimentel and fellow council members, the item before you is an update to the municipal code to bring it into compliance with some recent state legislation. The legislation, which was passed this last September, covers 3 general topic areas. One, right-of-way dedications and impact fees for residential development, accessory dwelling units, and notification requirements for certain ordinances. In the next few slides, I will try to briefly summarize the individual Assembly and Senate bills and go over how they affect our municipal code. First off, Assembly Bill 2533. It calls for allowing property owners to legalize ADUs that were built without permits before 2020. And then when they do so, they are exempt from complying from certain zoning code requirements. The law also exempts these ADUs from the city's development impact fees. Senate Bill 1211. It contains many provisions, but I'll focus on a couple of major ones. The first one relates to the permitted density on multifamily residential properties. Today, the law in our code allow up to 2 detached ADUs on a multifamily residential property. This new law increases that number to 8 detached ADUs for properties with an existing multifamily building. The next provision is...
Can we talk about that one for a little bit.
Sure.
Right now, your R1 single-family home, you can have an ADU. This law is saying you can have 8 ADUs where exactly?
On multifamily properties, so the R3 zone where we have
R3.
multiple units there already.
Okay, but not an R2. I mean, R2, you can probably get an ADU, but you can't have 8, correct?
Actually,
Can't be more than the number of units that are already on the property.
Can't be more than the number of units. So if I have an apartment building with 8 units and I've got the land, I can do 8 ADUs.
If they exist. If you have an R2 with one structure, you cannot do 2.
Okay.
Right.
Without an
I think
SP, without an
they
SP9
keep-
split.
They've changed
But
this
we-
ADU law almost every year now.
I know, I'm trying to keep track. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah,
Me
that's
too.
correct. So if you only have 4 units on a property, you can't have more than 4 detached ADUs.
Okay.
With that, I'll go into the next provision of the same law. It creates 4 categories of ADUs, attached and detached, that have some special sort of provisions as far as processing, streamlining, and development standard regulation. So if an ADU qualifies, fits under one of these 4 categories, it's permitted by right ministerially, which is the case today for all ADUs that we process. But the second is that they are exempt from local development standards such as FAR or lot coverage or open space, and then are only subject to specific height and setback regulations that were in the state law. So our ordinance includes provisions that comply with this new law. The next law is AB 3177. This prohibits cities from imposing dedication requirements for road widening for housing developments, except under very specific circumstances listed in the law. The law also defines certain related terms, dedication, housing developments, and so forth. Our ordinance addresses those provisions of the law, and it also clarifies exactly when the city can require dedications for development projects. Assembly Bill 2904 requires public notice period of 20 days for ordinances that affect permitted uses in a zone. Today, the standard notice period for public hearings is 10 days. So going forward for these types of ordinances where we're changing the list of permitted uses, for example, in a zone, they would require additional notification, additional time. And then Senate Bill 937, it requires delaying the collection of development impact fees for residential developments until the time of occupancy. Today, our practice is to collect them at the time building permits are issued. The ordinance addresses this, and we will change our practice so that we collect those fees at the time of occupancy. That was a quick summary of the state legislation and the major provisions in the draft ordinance. In conclusion, these amendments bring the municipal code into compliance with current state law. The amendments are consistent with our general plan and specifically our housing element, which calls for reducing constraints and facilitating housing construction. And they are exempt from further environmental review. And therefore, staff recommends that council conduct a public hearing on this item, introduce and waive the first reading of the proposed ordinance, and schedule a second reading for February 18th. And I'll be happy to take any questions you have.
The public hearing is now open for public input. Seeing none, do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Sure, Baldino will move to close.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Keldorf with the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'll sleep on the
No
job.
abstentions. Look, we survived an even-numbered vote. All right, council discussion.
Can I ask about the no need for environmental CEQA review? Is that because when Sacramento passes these laws, they tell the city that you cannot do a CEQA review of this law?
It's not necessarily that these particular laws exempted these laws from CEQA. It's just that we're changing our local regulations, and they don't have there's no expectation that they'll have a impact on the environment. So that's kind of the reason why adopting an ordinance would not be subject to sort of a detailed, lengthy environmental review. Yeah.
No, I understand what the report says, but process-wise, and City Attorney, maybe you know, Mr. Allen, maybe you know, when Sacramento passes these laws that the cities have to adopt, these zoning laws, we are told not to do a CEQA analysis because we are told that these changes will not have any environmental impacts.
In many instances, you're correct that the laws themselves build in an exemption from CEQA environmental review. I can't remember each an individual law whether they included that particular language.
I would just like to be precise when we are enacting state zoning laws that remove the ability of local jurisdictions to decide what their cities should look like. And so specifically, I'm at page 53. And it's section, well, I just closed the agenda.
Section 5 of the
Section
the
5, environmental, based on the facts set forth in 2, council finds the zone text amendments exempt from further review under the California environmental pursuant to CEQA guidelines, blah, blah, blah. This is because it's consists of only minor revisions to existing zoning regulations and related procedures and does not have the potential for causing a significant effect on the environment. If that can just be reworded to say because the laws that are coming down from Sacramento tell us that this won't have an impact. But if you add density, if you add, you know, cumulative, there is an impact. So I just want to, I agree that we have to approve the state law when it comes to changing local zoning. And the intention may be great, but I just want that to be a little bit more accurate, as so much as we haven't been asked to even look if there's an impact, let alone found that there is no environmental impact.
My only suggested modification that would be based upon, you use our language because it's consistent with the CEQA language, and say that we're basing this on Sacramento's changes to law, which we're required to make, and so our actions really are ministerial. I mean,
perfect.
Because we don't.
A little more accurate than us making the affirmative finding that.
We have to be in compliance with these laws, which again change almost every year now. And staff has to run very quickly to get them in place by as soon as they can after January 1, because we already have to comply with all these things. So you're correct when you're saying we really don't have a lot of leeway in this, and there are other areas where, like on the general plan of bringing it consistent with the housing element, they don't even give you enough really time to do CEQA the way maybe it should be done.
Right, right.
But the point's well taken, right? We're not saying that there's no environmental impact. We're saying that we're doing as we're told, which is
more accurate.
Which is a more accurate than an affirmative sense that there is no environmental
I
impact.
don't even think HCD bothers or minds us saying that.
No, but in the CEQA reform of some regard is mooted every year. You can see a formulation where a CEQA is reformed and someone comes out and says, well, you guys made an affirmative CEQA declaration in 2025, and we're saying, well, no, we did not.
Yeah, at some point too, Sacramento may help clean up the CEQA regulations to make them more consistent with the mandated things that they send down to us, hopefully.
Further questions?
Two questions. One on the public road dedication. I guess it's twofold. Are there any previously approved projects where we had required a public road dedication and now we would not be able to? And if so, how do we handle that? Because they've already been approved, but maybe not constructed. Is that an issue?
I think that the law applies going forward, but I believe that the Pacific Coast Commons project, because it is a residential project under the eyes of the law, then they could potentially be exempt. I just don't remember all the findings in the traffic study for the project, because one of the exceptions in this current law is if there is a traffic study that identifies specific sort of safety issues that are caused by the proposed project. So it is possible that that one project would be exempt, but I can't tell you definitively unless I go back and go through this traffic study.
If you look back in history at the city and these dedications, like Grand Avenue was an area, there's some areas east of PCH where the city was trying to look forward and say, as things develop, I mean, this particular development may not require that, for example, Grand Avenue get widened, but over time, the cumulative impact of all these developments, Grand Avenue should get widened. So it's going to be more difficult in those kind of cases to do these things, to plan things based upon the cumulative impact of various developments. Now, it's a relatively built-out city. Hopefully, that's not going to be a big issue, and there's been times when there's been dedications by developers, particularly east of BCH, where the city's ultimately determined they don't actually need that land. So, you're forecasting.
Thank you. Second question about the application process for ADUs so it says, notwithstanding Section B, a previously unpermitted accessory dwelling unit constructed before January 1st, 2020 shall not be required to pay impact fees or connection or capacity when unless utility infrastructure is required. So I guess, again, twofold. Like what is the process for verifying that a structure exists prior to 2020?
The state law did not give us guidance on that, but I suppose that it would be going through our permit records, identifying what actually had a permit on a property, and then going through aerial photos to see if there's any new buildings, in the 2021 aerial as opposed to the 2019 aerial.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to piggyback on your first question about the road dedication. There's certainly large developments that in the Pacific Coast Commons example, but other ones where we've asked for street widening or narrowing of sidewalks to accommodate right turn lanes. Are we now foreclosed from making that request in a development agreement? Or not the request, but from enforcing it?
Not necessarily. It'll be, again, if talk about residential, if you can show that it's necessary, this is where probably police and fire will be a large part of it, is there a safety issue that is necessary to widen it? It's going to cause some real traffic issue. I mean, it's just going to have to be much more exacting about showing the need for it.
And with the conversion of uncovered parking, are we effectively out of any recourse on R1 parking requirements for
ADUs? Yes.
I think that's actually been true for a number of years now.
Yeah, no, I know that, but with the conversion of the last driveway spaces.
Yeah, it started with, you could, as the city, make sure there was parking. Even if they converted the garage, you could require other parking, and then slowly that's all just been whittled away to no, you can't really require anything.
Yeah.
Happily, with the reduced speeds, we won't need additional stop signs.
Even your stop.
Mayor, I just wanted to mention, since the issue of dedications came up, I just put on an extra slide that I had that identifies those three sort of exceptions for when the city could potentially require dedications up here. So if it's away from a transit priority area, meaning it's more than half a mile from our Green Line stations. So let's think of the west side of town. And then the housing development has a large frontage on a street. So I can only think of maybe one or two sites along Pacific Coast Highway that might qualify there. And then the city attorney mentioned the situation where the city actually does a traffic study and it identifies traffic safety sort of concerns that are the result of that particular project. And in that case, the city could require a dedication to widen the road. And then the law does not prevent the city from taking a dedication for other reasons beyond widening the roadbed. So if there's no sidewalk, for instance, the city could go in and say, no, we need 5 feet so we can put in a sidewalk, or to do some other improvements, but not for widening the roadbed itself.
But aren't these laws mostly focused on making the process just over the counter? And so is it going to be, I guess, the responsibility of your department when these come in to say, do we need to look at this? Do we need a traffic study? Because the whole the whole point of what the state's trying to do is to make these things kind of be check the box, and there's no public hearing and there's no review. They just start building. So
Yes, generally, this law tries to make that by making it difficult for cities to take dedications on development, on housing projects, which is kind of an incentive for housing developers. It makes it easier for them to build. But then it places the burden on the city to demonstrate that there is an impact or a specific reason for requiring the dedication. So it does make it easier on the developers, and it pushes the burden on the city to sort of prove the necessity. Yeah. So the city can't simply request it because our circulation element projected that we might need a wider street in the future. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so we're gonna have to be a little more proactive about certain sites which may or may not be developed, looking at the safety and
Correct.
Okay.
And generally, we have been asking developers for larger projects to do a more detailed traffic study just to find out whether there are any impacts of that kind.
Any further questions for Mr. Samaras? Any input to the city attorney on verbiage?
Well, let me ask, do we have consensus on modifying section 6 or whatever to be a little bit more accurate?
Sure.
Okay.
I suspect we will.
I agree with the recommended language proposed by council. So if there's no further discussion.
Yeah, city attorney, with that linguistic change, is that de minimis enough for you to read the resolution?
Why don't I put the language in the record? So we'll it's an ordinance that this will be the first read, and then it'll come back for potential adoption if it's introduced tonight. An ordinance amending El Segundo Municipal Code Title 15 to comply with state law regarding residential development, right-of-way dedications, fees, accessory dwelling unit standards and fees, and public notification requirements for certain ordinances, and find the same to be exempt from review under the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to sections 15061B3 of the CEQA guidelines. Based upon the determinations, I'll add this to made by Department of Housing and Community Development and the state legislature that the city is required to adopt these regulations.
May I have a motion to adopt the resolution?
I will move to adopt the resolution.
May I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
4-0, that is Keldorf and Baldino. All right, item 9, the DEI Annual Work Plan. Ms. Mancini, will you report on this item? The floor is yours.
Oh, yes, thank you. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. Tonight, the Chair of the City's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, Cristabel Valena, will provide an update on the DEI's proposed work plan for 2025. In addition, Chair Valena will provide a brief history of the DEI and accomplishments to date, and will address the Council on proposed changes to the DEI's bylaws in relation to quorum and membership. Finally, Chair Valena will open a discussion about the frequency of DEI membership meetings. So I will go ahead and turn it over to Cristabel. Cristabel, you're going to use this to make it go forward. Just this little button here. Okay. If you need me, I'll be right here.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm short. All right. Thank you so much, Allie. I also have Sean O'Brien with us from our committee here today, so he can chime in as needed as well. So, hello, Council. Good evening, everyone, and happy Black History Month. I am Cristabel Valena, so I am the chair of the city's DEI committee, also a 10-year resident. I am now in my 5th year on this committee, beginning my 2nd term. So I'm one of the OG, one of the original members, and just started my 2nd term in November of 2024. So you have me for 3 more years. Oh, sorry. There it goes. Okay, so today we'll review our proposed work plan for the coming year. We'll discuss some updates related to our bylaws. We'll vote on issues as you all prefer, and note any other next steps. So the DEI committee is a group of volunteer committee members that was established after El Segundo residents shared the concerns about local racial diversity issues, inclusion, treatment by police, experiences at local schools, and other matters during several community rallies in response to the tragic murder of George Floyd in 2020. Our council responded to these concerns and confirmed establishing the DEI committee in June of 2020 to ensure that these issues are properly identified, discussed, vetted, and ultimately addressed by City Council. We held our first meeting in October of 2020. And soon after, we developed this purpose statement and vision for the committee, and we look forward to revisiting this together with our current committee members and council liaison in the coming weeks. So in the past few years, as mentioned, the DEI committee submitted 4 reports, complete with recommendations for each of the 4 issue areas directed by council. They were public safety, community at large, citywide, and local economy. We will continue our ongoing activities related to those areas, such as collection and analysis of data, learning more about the progress of our recommendations. It has been some time since we delivered those reports, and we're eager to hear more about how our city's progressed since then. Several of our committee members participated in Community Police Academy, including myself. I highly recommend it to any council members who have not yet done this, and I'm hoping our newer committee members can participate as well. In the meantime, we have identified a few priority items that we'd like to achieve in the coming months, and so we'll dive into each of these this evening. And as noted, we did consider past feedback from our action plans and reports that they've been very or perhaps overly ambitious in the past. So we're following that guidance, and we took that approach of focusing on a few key items each year instead. So that, again, is the approach we took with this work plan. Of course, if there are additional action items, activities that you'd like to prioritize for us, please do share. We can bring in guest speakers. We can host a bullying bystander intervention training. We can coordinate focus groups. We have pages and pages of recommendations that we can help to implement or to follow up on. All right, so before I dive in, actually, I wanted to extend our committee's appreciation to Councilmember Giroux for serving as our liaison for the past 4 years. We understand it's been challenging, but I hope that it has also been rewarding. And we look forward to working with Councilmember Keldorf as our new liaison. Congratulations. And our thanks to you both for taking a lead on this important work. So you'll notice that we've restructured the subcommittees slightly to include 3 teams, and we'll dive deeper into each of these. But as a brief introduction, so we have data and resources, community relations, and city engagement. So data and resources will be the point of contact for public safety and information on trainings and resources. Community relations will cover community at large and community engagement. And then city engagement will serve as point for our work with city agencies and local businesses. So the data and resources team, I don't think Emily made it. She was trying, but she couldn't make it today. But this team will be led by Emily Atmore, who was selected for our committee starting in December of 2020. And is also starting her 2nd term on the committee. And she was recommitted in November of this past year. So again, in addition to some of our ongoing activities like drafting proclamations and compiling resources for the city to use and share, the big project for this team will be building a relationship with our chiefs of fire and police, hopefully culminating into a collaborative event or activity. We could host a panel discussion or a Q&A session on a topic that the community would find interesting or a subject that perhaps they want to better understand. So you might recall early on with our committee, we had learned of complaints from employees at Aerospace Corporation about police stops on their way to and from their offices here in El Segundo. So Chief Bermudez at the time and his team and a couple members of our committee sat down with them, and it was so helpful for them to hear context and steps that they can take together. So we could bring a version of this to the community members here in El Segundo. For example, a rep from ESPD could walk through the RIPA data and explain what it means, how we compare it to other neighboring cities in a very digestible, easy to understand way. We can take questions in advance of the event so we can come prepared with responses. Or can we cover a different topic that the chiefs or the council have received many questions about more recently? We look forward to meeting with the chiefs of police and fire to listen and learn more, and then work together on how we can share information and perhaps strengthen the perception and relationships with the community has with public safety. All right, the next team is Community Relations. Val is also on vacation, so she apologized she could not make it here today. This team is led by Valerie Green, who started her first term with us in February of 2023. So Valerie took the lead on our United Against Hate Week efforts last year, which I'll discuss more in a bit. But this team also supports other city and community events like Joy Around the World and potential partnerships with organizations like Black and Mayberry and their Juneteenth Festival. So perhaps we can work together to bring the Fired Up Girls Camp with El Segundo Fire as well. But the big project for this year is centered around community education. Similar also with Aerospace Corporation, we had hosted a panel discussion early on in the life of this committee. And we would love to do that again on a topic that the city and the businesses deem important to discuss with the community at large. Other ideas are panel discussion or guest speaker talking about the history of El Segundo and how it impacts communities today. There's so many businesses here in El Segundo who are united around DEI efforts, and this presents an incredible partnership opportunity to educate, increase awareness, and include neighboring South Bay cities who are also committed to this work to build environments and a culture where everyone belongs. And these are some shots from our last United Against Hate Week event. It was in September this past year. So it included live artist Craig Provost, a beautiful performance from El Segundo High School student and singer Sydney Porter. We had remarks from our council liaison, Lange Giroux, and Sea Change member John Pickhaver. We had donuts and more. In partnership with the South Bay Community Coalition Against Hate, we supported a nutrition pantry drive, and the library hosted story time. We also hosted our first ever poster contest. So you can see here, even at short notice, it was done at short notice, we were able to award two El Segundo residents. The posters here were done by Erin Worley and Lauren Stevens. So save the date again. This year, it's the week of October 19th. We do hope to evolve and give our Candlelight Vigil a refresh. We have to start plans earlier, and with the South Bay Coalition, perhaps combining some of our audiences and events. They also had different activations throughout the South Bay, and we all had very similar audience numbers, so I think, and I hope to discuss with them how we might be able to kind of join our efforts more this year. And some lessons learned. Last year's event was at the same time as back to school night at the high school. An October event also allows us more time to work with the schools on things like the poster contest. So pretty excited about this adjustment in timing. So in any case, please save the date and let us know how you'd like to get involved. Sean, do you want to take city engagement team? And Sean O'Brien started his first term with us in June just of last year and moved quickly up the ranks, serving as our current DEI committee vice chair and lead of city engagement.
Hello, Council. My name is Sean O'Brien, and I am the current vice chair for the DEI committee. I will be helping lead the charge for the city engagement efforts in the DEI committee. And similar to other teams, this team will conduct ongoing activities such as continuing to build new or strengthen current relationships with partners like South Bay Coalition, the city's HR department, and Arts and Culture Committee, and others. But the big focus for the coming year is collecting, sharing, and celebrating successes of DEI right here in El Segundo. We look forward to the opportunity to learn more about our local businesses, make connections, and identify ways we can help and support. This research could culminate in some form of recognition awarded to a business, a resident, and a student for their impact on this work. Our findings could lead to a networking event, shadow days, or internship programs. Details can be further fleshed out in the coming weeks, and we invite your participation. Back.
Thank you, Sean. All right. And then I just wanted to use these next couple slides to note DEI as part of the city's strategic plan, so specifically under goal number 3, as you all know. And I know that while goal number 3 is not a priority for 2024 and 2025, I've highlighted here in yellow a few of this year's priority goals where DEI could and should have an impact. So for example, attracting new businesses and fostering networking, collaboration, staff recruitment and retention and training, and then opportunities to use innovation and increase efficiency and transparency. So these are just some of the benefits of DEI as they relate to more so the economy and the workplace, but you can see how these can be applied to the community and our residents as well. We've heard even today from community members who are concerned and scared and who want to feel safe and included. And so this work is needed now more than ever to help strengthen a sense of welcome and belonging here in El Segundo, to make sure our history and our progress are documented and shared, and that we continue to move forward. So we've done quite a bit, lots and lots of work over the last 4 years, but there's still work to be done. There's still community members who don't understand DEI and its purpose and importance. There's still many who are not aware of the history or the past laws and systems that still impact historically underserved and marginalized communities to this day. There's still community members who do not feel safe or seen. So again, if there are other activities or recommendations from past reports that are of interest, please don't hesitate to let us know. Our committee will revisit our past recommendations as well and see if there's anything that we should be sure to follow up on and touch base about. In the end, we want this work to be something that our city continues to be very proud of. So this is just a snapshot of the work plan that you all, I think, got in with your agenda. Would you like to discuss this now prior to moving on to bylaws, or do you want to move on? How does this?
Why don't we do it all at once, and then we'll come back and get it in chunks, so we get the presentation and then the council comments and questions.
Okay. So this is the work plan part of it. So you want me to keep going?
Yeah, keep going.
Okay. So the bylaw discussion around quorum. So listed here are the current 7 seated members of the DEI committee. 2 of them are from the El Segundo Unified School District, Steve and Marisa. As I mentioned, Val, Sean, Emily, and I are current members. Allison was approved in November, but still has not yet been sworn in. But her term should have started in January, will end in October with Emily and me. So quorum is 5. The issues with quorum, as you all know, have varied. It's been mentioned here today: schedule conflicts, time commitment, members moving out of El Segundo. Honestly, there's been some member burnout and health issues or family issues. And again, we had a couple of members who found that they were not necessarily aligned with the core mission of DEI committee, and so they decided to discontinue with our committee. But a key factor we hopefully have some control over is the recruitment and the onboarding process, which we've already seen some improvement with. Like, for example, Emily and I, our terms ended in October, and same with Shad McFadden. So we had our interviews, very close to when our terms ended, and were interviewed and approved pretty quickly, and then we were able to continue on. So I would love for Allison to be sworn in so we can include her now in February going forward.
Is Shad not?
He's not continuing on. His term ended. Yes. That's why I'm the last person standing from the original group. So, as you know, quorum at monthly meetings is needed to make progress and to vote on things, to agendize things, and to do our work. And so we saw that another CCB had done it, the ACC had done this in terms of requesting a revision to their bylaws to institute where quorum is based on seated members instead of available seats. So we're recommending that we get that revised on our bylaws as well. And then again, that additional solution would be quicker recruitment, selection, and swearing in of new members ahead of terms ending for members instead of after. So a lot of the issues of open seats was because interviews and postings were happening after terms were ending. We've already gotten a great handle on this. We've been working with Mashia and Ali and the team to get this in a better rhythm. So we're already pretty happy with how things have been going, but we still do have 2 open seats. So hopefully we can get those filled and Allison sworn in. I don't have a slide, do I? No. I don't have a slide on the meeting numbers, but it's related to this, I would say. So, so for example, if something came up just before a monthly meeting that required quorum and a vote, we would not be allowed to discuss it that meeting. We would need to agendize it at that meeting and then discuss it at the next monthly meeting. So now imagine if we had to wait to the next quarterly meeting to be able to do that. So all of the work we completed these last 4 years happened because of both monthly committee meetings and monthly, sometimes bi-weekly, sometimes weekly subcommittee meetings. It was slow at first, but we got in a rhythm and made it work. And again, especially with volunteers, jobs, families, responsibilities, the meetings helped keep us connected, productive, and active. So again, both are necessary, and we strongly recommend keeping both our subcommittee meetings and our monthly meetings. And then in terms of the pilot program, also related to our bylaws, so this was the current language in our bylaws about the 2 members. I know Weisburn had declined to volunteer, so ESUSD provided 2. They had their first meeting with us in March, and their terms end in May of this year. So we have some time, but I did get feedback from Marisa and from our committee, and so wanted to explore the option of keeping up to 2 seats, 1 to 2 seats prioritized for school district representatives who participate also in that same interview selection process as the rest of our members in our CCBs, and then if selected, are held to the same expectation as the other voting members. And that in the event that there are fewer applicants than available seats for those school district seats, then we just fill them with another community member. And as you see, we usually have a rolling, open seat where if for some reason we need to prioritize a school district person, we could. But we've already, even before this pilot program and even after, we expect to be partnering with the school district, especially, pretty closely. They've been working hand in hand with us on Unite Against Hate Week, for example. So we don't expect, even if they don't come to meetings or they're not officially on our committee, we still expect to partner with the school district as much as possible.
So can I ask, you're saying we'll still have these 2 kind of seats, but if they don't show up, then we can replace them. Isn't it cleaner just to say we don't need to have 2 seats for school district members, right? Because they're available to you. You know how to get a hold of them. I think that kind of simplifies it. Then we can put on there folks who want to, because they've got their own stuff going on.
Yes, they're very busy. Well, and especially the 2 that they chose to represent are so busy.
So that might help you with your quorum issue too, because now you've got folks who are dedicated to, DEI or the subcommittee. So
yes, and I believe in that first round of interviews, there were representatives from the schools that had applied. So I think there might be interest.
PTA parents, but it's all, we're all kind of mingled together here. So you're going to get someone who's somehow connected to the schools, but if there's something specific joint-wise, they're available. So that's an idea you might want to think about.
Yes. I will say it has been valuable to have Marisa on the committee.
She's a world of knowledge.
Yes. She's been here forever and been doing this work. And, school district was also very committed to DEI, of course, and she was very instrumental in that for the school district. So it's been awesome to have her, but I understand it's going to be challenging for her to continue, I think. Okay. So it's trying to come up with ways to keep the
So, Chris,
essence of it, but
sorry.
We're open to.
One of the things I want to look at is that word at the end in the first line, it says pilot, right? So it's a pilot program. It was actually my idea that I came up with because one of the things that came up during the meetings was that a lot of the issues at the time were emanating from students, right? There's a lot of stuff going on at the schools. As a matter of fact, I think Genesis, when she was on the committee, particularly mentioned that. And I'm like, okay, this might be a good idea. Let's try a pilot program of having 2 of them in these meetings. If it's not working and they can't make it, then we can end the pilot. That's what it's there for. So it ends in May. Okay, so let's open up recruitment and start again and see if we can come up with a better system. But, that's one of the things of attempting to do something to better it, but having it perceived as a way of us gutting it. And that's frustrating to me. So that was done to help, to expand the reach, to make it where people are working together. Is that fair to say? That's what we were trying to do?
Yes,
okay.
Definitely. I think that's the intention. Yes. And I think that now we've had Marisa here, she understands what we do, and I think it'll help. She could help us with recruitment and getting, more representation from others that can actually handle the workload on our committee. So that's all I have. I don't know if you have, I'm sure you have questions and comments. But yeah, these are the...
Just so we're clear, the request on quorum is not, quorum is whoever shows up. It's of the people who have been appointed. You're going to have a majority to make a quorum.
Correct. So
We
right
just
now
voted
we
to
have
give it to
7.
ACC.
It would
Okay.
be 4, would be quorum instead of 5.
Okay,
Mhm.
okay. And then can we go back to your work plan?
Yes. Which one? You want to do the summary here? Let's just start here.
Thank you for putting us together. Thank you for your service on the committee. The issue that,
Can I interject one quick thing on work plan before we get started? That city attorney, you have a data question or a data point to highlight?
Yeah, as far as a meeting with the police chief, and I think that's happened in the past with the 2 or 3 police chiefs have been here since the committee was started. Certainly fine to meet with the police chief. Given the current litigation with Mr. Puckett, I do recommend that not include any discussion of the RIPA data because that's a central part of that litigation.
Very well, with that in mind, Councilmember Baldino, please go ahead.
that was the topic I was going to bring up. So meet with the police chief, meet with the fire chief, open house, questions, whatever. Because we have been sued regarding this RIPA and this other data, our counsel is telling us this can't be a part of our work plan.
Okay. Yes, I wasn't aware.
Can I
Thank you.
pivot off that, though, related but different? And that is the city interacts with people in a million different ways. Obviously, policing is the most overt one because they have decaled cars and drive around. But there's a lot of data out there that I think would be instructive. We're going to have 17,000 people in this town for the first time since probably 1971. And those people, we don't really have a good grasp of, as a city, when we look to illuminate blind spots and how people are included in what our diverse population looks like. There's all manner of things in there in the richness of who's applying for permits, what kind of people are moving in, are we doing things intelligently? I think there's some stories of foibles, right, where cities get into doing developments and they end up with buildings oriented toward graveyards and people won't move into those buildings and things like that because they're not sensitive to the populace that's moving in. So I'd be very curious about widening a little bit of our approach to what our data capture is and how the city is interacting with the populace and what that populace looks like in 2025. Just because we are seeing more people in a less dense manner than we once did, but more people.
Great.
We're still on work plan, right? I was, okay.
Yep.
No.
I got a few things. So, a couple things from, again, public comment that I want to make sure that we understand. One of the things came up about this is the only committee that's not funded. That's a lie. It's not true. The only committee that is funded is the Arts and Culture Committee, and it's funded through a 1% for the arts that's funded by businesses. So that is the case. There's no other committee that has a budget other than the Arts and Culture Committee, all right? The other comment that came up is that Councilmember Drew, is it too much or too little? Is that the reason what they have a problem with? Ms. Goldstein referenced a meeting where I actually was at, and I said to you, hey, listen, let's try to come up with a work plan that's achievable in a 12-month period, right? Because sometimes when you go too far off of that, you go too scattered, and it's a little more difficult to get things accomplished. So my idea was, hey, let's just kind of bring it in so that we can get some wins and get some accomplishments and then move on. So you always have something to work on. That was the discussion. Since that discussion, is this the first time that you guys have brought a work plan to us? I believe it is.
Possibly.
Right. So it wasn't that I or anyone else was holding you up. It was that it took you time to come up with a work plan.
Maybe last year we did.
I'm sorry?
We might have last year. My sense of time.
I don't think so. I think this is the first time since that discussion. So all I'm saying is, and it takes time to come up with some of this. By the way, great presentation. It's a great deck, and you're a great speaker. So you did a good job. So all I'm saying is, I want to get things moving forward, but framing of narratives is important, and I'm tired of false narratives, right? So on the past things that was also brought up that we haven't done anything. So out of all the things, you've been here, you were literally the first person we appointed, right?
Really?
You were the first one. You were the first one voted in, okay? What has been suggested or done from the committee that the city council said we're absolutely not doing anything like this. It's a hot point, or we haven't done anything. Like, that's the part I'm kind of, I figured if the things that were important that we hadn't done, they'd be listed here. Because again, it's, the city council is doing nothing. So I'm trying to figure out what is it that we haven't done.
Yeah, and there were some ideas, I think, early on before we fully understood the role of auditor, quote-unquote auditor, right? Like the town hall meetings and the focus groups and creating opportunities for conversation.
Right.
So those kinds of things, you know, early on, I think the committee was really excited about. And we thought, okay, baby steps, right? So we could get the data, we analyze it, we see what needs are, and then we can use that to kind of inform topics of discussion or information sharing or opportunities to understand one another more, things like that. And so I think that exercise of the past 4 years of doing those reports helped with what we're presenting now. In terms of continuing, there's been turnover not just with our committee, but also with staff and chiefs and things. So just kind of visiting, because again, Chief Bermudez and Chief Whalen had very different goals and objectives, especially with DEI. And I would love to hear what the new chiefs, their priorities, and just continue to be aligned with that. There's lots of I have pages and pages of recommendations. And I think that some of these have been implemented. I think that they have. And I would love to touch base with folks at these different city entities that might know, so we can confirm, see, okay, did that work? Did it not work? What are some cool things that we can celebrate and share, or what are some lessons learned? So,
I agree with you. You need wins, right? Everybody needs wins. Also, remember, you've been through, since you were appointed, 3 police chiefs and 3 fire chiefs, right?
Yes.
So even with us, there's a lot of things that happen. Like, there's turnover, there's trying to get people on. There's a lot that happens. So I get where you're going. So what you're saying is that now that there's more clarity on what it is that we're looking for, that's what went into your work plan. Is that fair to say?
Yes. Well, we were hoping, yes, that this was aligned with what you all were
going through your work
based
plan,
on the last 4 years.
Like, I'm looking at the first thing, the data and resources team, which is Emily. Is there anything, I don't have any issues with number 1. Is there anything that we are possibly holding anyone back on? Is there anything that you feel that is not being provided to you that you need to accomplish this goal?
No, at this point, Emily is really taking a lead. She's already compiled resources for Black History Month. We're crafting social media posts just for you all to have templates to help make your jobs easier a little bit in terms of acknowledging some of these cultural things happening.
Okay.
That's
number 2 we just talked about, and I also think that ALPRs is probably something the chief could, maybe it's a good thing to be able to explain what it is that they do and how they're used. Okay, that might be something but that's something that the chief can help you out with. So number 2 looks good. So I have no issues other than the one thing on the RIPA data on the first part.
Can I throw a couple things in there that with that, I would love to see age, disability, income level. If there's one thing that we do a very poor job with, is associating our demographics and our fees and our cost of services and things with varying income levels. And we get that all the time. Every time there's a crisis, all of a sudden people come out of the woodwork who've lived here for 40 years in a de facto rent controlled apartment because they're paying below market rates, and suddenly we're scrambling to sort of solve those problems. So illuminating issues in different identity and protected class groups would be very, very helpful.
Yes, definitely.
So just to finish up on the last, from the city engagement team and the community relations teams, they're good ideas. Again, is there anything here that you feel you have a barrier to accomplishing based on this city council?
No, not necessarily. With the best practices, that was something that we wanted to do again early on through the local economy. But I don't think it was necessarily shot down, but it wasn't something that we were encouraged to pursue.
But I think there's also certain things that can be done in the private sector that cannot be done in the public sector.
Yes,
right? So
but still information
there's rules
sharing.
and regulations that we have to follow, but you get my point. Is so I'm looking through it. I don't see anything now. In the 4+ years that I was liaison for that, I don't think I was ever told, hey, Lance, we are not getting any cooperation from anyone in the city. Can you please help me address that?
No, I think eventually we would get connected to the people we need to for other things.
But to get to my point is that we're being accused of not doing anything and not being responsive and not caring and wanting to gut and all the other virtue signaling things that come out, right? But I'm asking you, I was the liaison for this committee, and never once did I have someone say, anybody in there say, the chief's not doing something, the city manager's not doing something, I need help from you. I'm like, nothing, I've never had it. So I'm saying is, if you need help, Michelle's she's more than happy to help. We're all happy to help. But we can't fix a problem that we don't know exists.
Yeah, no,
Okay,
I
we have a
understand.
lot, as you can see, this is one agenda. If you looked at the agenda from 2 weeks ago, it had like 22 items
know.
on it. There's a lot of things. I'm not saying it's not important. That's not it. It's just that we get pulled in a lot of different directions. However, the squeaky wheel gets the oil, right? So if there's a problem, say something. We always address problems.
Yeah, and we've brought you in, so there has been, it's an ongoing theme of, wait, is this what council wants us to do, or is this not what council wants to do? And we debate that often.
And then I always say, no matter what I would say to you, I'm like, if you feel strongly enough about it, throw it up at us.
Yes.
It's fine.
And so we hoped that we based this work plan off of what we've seen, but we weren't, again,
think
we
it's a
came
solid
in not
plan.
necessarily sure if
Look,
it was.
I think it's look, I think it's a very solid plan. It's
Okay.
really well done. You got a couple bullet points per group. I think it's something you can accomplish within a 12-month period, 18-month period. I think is a really good job. And then I can see, and again, I think one of the things you brought up when you talked about about meetings, right, is that you feel that in some ways that having less meetings would disengage, kept people disengaged from it, and that's been one of the problems you're having. It's a good point. You want to keep people involved, and if those meetings help bind you together, fantastic. If you, who's been on it the longest, feels that this is the best way to go about it, I support what you say.
Well, and you mentioned barriers, so having more members will help. We did a lot of work because we had 9 members for the most part, especially for those first couple years. And now I think much of 2022 and 2023, I think we had at most 5, maybe 6. That's half, you know?
Right,
So it's
actually, I'm gonna-
manpower in terms
I've
of getting
talked
these
a lot,
things
so
done.
nobody else says anything, but I do want to bring up when we talk about the interview and vetting process.
Yes.
I do want to talk about that, but I'll let if anybody else wants to comment on the work plan.
I don't have any work plan comments. If we're segueing, I guess, to the topic of quorum, I mean, another idea, because I do think that the school representation is helpful, but what if those positions are advisory and they're not voting members? And so then those seats are open to voting members, which helps the quorum issue. Because forgive me if I'm wrong, but it feels like some of the issue in moving to quarterly is a staff issue as well. And I think of our school district representatives, I mean, clearly the 2 on there have very big jobs during the times that you would meet, and it makes it hard for them to come. They add so much to it, but it's almost, they have the ability to come and audit or advise, but they're not necessary for quorum, and we could expand to other seated members. That would be my one recommendation.
No, I agree with Lance. Like, we tried the pilot. If it's difficult to get these voting members there, then let's let the pilot end and expand it to other people who want to focus on DEI. Do you have a comment?
Yes, I just wanted to chime in as well that one of the issues with quorum is that it's like what you just said, we need more people in the room, and I really enjoyed working with Marissa, and I think she's valuable, and I really like what you just said about it being more advisory so that we can have more people dedicated there. The only thing, I was also just going to add, I'm new, so I think that's good. I don't have the baggage of what came in the last 4 years. I just want to get stuff done. And I think that this is a very, very important committee. I think that we need to continue doing the work. And you mentioned, Councilmember Drew, that you have emails coming from people who don't want this, don't want DEI. And I think that's part of our job. We talked about this in the room. It's like, well, then there's a communication problem going on because there's nothing but positivity coming out of that room and the plans that we're making. And I would invite anybody who feels negatively about DEI to come in and sit in on one of our meetings and see the kind of stuff that we're doing and what we're proposing and all the things that are on our agenda. And I don't think that the quarterly suggestion was in malice, but I think that a lot of people seem upset about that because it's like, no, we really, really want to do this work, and we're volunteers, and it's so important. I moved to El Segundo because I think it is an incredibly welcoming place. I've only lived here for about 4 years, and it's one of I want to live here forever. And my mom she's from Nicaragua. I'm a first generation Nicaraguan American on my mom's side. And when she came and visited El Segundo, she said, "Oh, this is just such an incredible place. It's so diverse, so welcoming." And that was really important to me to hear my mom say that, because in Louisiana, that's not what it was. We wouldn't be able to have these discussions. And the problem with what's happening at a federal level is that that's trickling down to the conversations that we're having locally. I don't need to bring up what just happened. We all saw it, and it's very upsetting to hear the President of the United States say things about diversity when that is, in my heart and my mind, it's really what makes us so important. So just kind of taking this back to what we're talking about, we just need the time, the monthly meetings, and we need people in the room, and I would love to expedite that. We don't need money or special considerations made. It's just, let us keep doing the work. Like you said, you wanted it to be there forever. Let's do it. Let's keep on going.
Any further council questions or comments?
We're going to move on to I think the vetting and that's one of the interview process. We've talked about that in the past, that we have 10 minutes to interview everybody that comes in, right? You get literally, you're on a clock. It's like speed dating. And it's very difficult because each of us gets one question, and we're trying to fit it in a short amount of time. We do the same exact process for every single committee, so it's not that this one's different. And sometimes it's hard, right? But one of the things that we have to start looking at on this committee in particular is, okay, what tough questions do we ask? And do you want to know the answers to them? All right? Do we want to sit there and say, hey, is the first question, do you have any bias?
Everyone does.
Thank you very much. That's the slippery slope, right? Because everybody has. Is there one bias that's more acceptable than another? Probably not, right? So I think in some people's viewpoint, maybe it is. But from us, who has to make those decisions, if we sit there and say, okay, are we ruling out everyone with a bias, or are we looking at particular things? All right, so it's not easy. All right, we don't get a huge pool of people that come in. We've had a tremendous amount of people that are doing it. So my question is, what, in your opinion, would help that interview process?
I think we saw for some of these from our last conversations around it, but things that helped were giving some background on the expectations and the actual time commitment, because I think, especially if you're new, this is my first committee ever serving. I didn't realize, it's monthly meetings and quorum, you're learning all about these things and getting used to the pace of government work, right? So all of those things, so managing the expectations.
Very slow.
Yes. So, managing the expectations of, what the role looks like. So I think that's been, directing them to the website, giving them more information there. And then we did come up with a set of questions. We know you only have 10 minutes and it's fast. But if there are questions there that resonate with you or that you want to ask a particular candidate, we shared that as well. And we can reshare it. But it's really kind of helping to identify folks that do care and see that it's important, that there's not so much convincing of the importance of the role of DEI, because we really need people that can kind of just hit the ground running and help us with this work and come with fresh new ideas, fresh new energy. Again, burnout is some reasons why committee members haven't returned. And so, those kinds of things in terms of prioritizing the types of folks that end up being approved for the committee. Again, understanding, aligned with all of us in terms of the values of DEI and importance, able to hit the ground running and put in the work and the time.
Further comments, questions?
And hopefully we don't have to ever use this, and that we'll have quorum every time, and we'll have 9 members, but we've just found what we need. We need an adjustment if you can approve it.
Can I grab do we have consensus to discontinue the pilot program?
Yes.
You think so? Okay. And does anyone object to, do we have consensus to keep the meetings at monthly?
Yeah, there was never a motion on the floor.
Okay, yeah,
so
never a motion,
it was
so we have
just discussion.
consensus on this. Okay, with that, so I have items 1 and 2, we're working on work plan now and the quorum bylaw.
A question, could we keep the Marisa until May?
It's a,
Until her
Yeah, it ends in
term
May.
yeah,
ends?
so yeah, the pilot program will conclude as scheduled in
Okay.
May. And the meetings are open, so people can come and advise.
But
as
we
much
need
as
her
they
for
like.
quorum at this point.
At the same
So-
time, since we know that that's ending in May, we need to get interviews done in the next 30 days so that people can be up and running, or 30 to 60 days.
We have to, because we have planning commission and other stuff to fill.
Yeah, we have a lot going
Yeah,
on.
you usually do them all at the same time. Yes, go.
Can we announce that on social media and across platforms and make it very evident and where to apply on the website?
Yeah.
Thanks.
I will defer to the clerk.
Awesome. Okay, that was it.
All right, do we have any further council discussion on items 1 and 2, the work plan and the bylaws?
Well, the work plan as amended as proposed by council.
Correct.
But yeah, the bylaws, the quorum, no problem with that.
All right, well, with that, I will take, and can we do these all? We'll do them one at a time to have some confusion. Let's do 1 and 2. Can I have a motion to approve the work plan as amended and the bylaw changes?
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Okay, 4-0, that's a Giroux Keldorf. And then item 3, there is no motion, so that will go. And then item 4, we don't have to take any action there because the pilot program is concluding. All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Vaina.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone. Have a
Christabel.
good night.
Now for the controversial landscape maintenance RFP.
Don't go. Don't
Do,
go.
do you need a Gatorade? A Motrin?
Follow that,
Here we
Ally.
go.
Woo-wee. Okay, we're gonna pull this up here. Oh, make sure I have my little clicker. All right. All right, everybody ready for this discussion? Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. Tonight, I'm before you seeking authorization to release a request for proposals to secure a contracted vendor to perform landscape maintenance services for the City of El Segundo. The city is currently in contract with a vendor whose term for 3-year services will expire on May 31st, 2025. The landscape maintenance services vendor provides a majority of the landscaping and maintenance of city parks, facilities, medians, open green space, and other city-owned properties. City parks maintenance staff supplement the vendor's work by providing ball field maintenance and trash removal at Recreation Park, landscaping and maintenance at Camp Eucalyptus and around City Hall. Park maintenance staff also manage repairs to park infrastructure, including irrigation, lighting, fencing, walkways, playgrounds, all the picnic tables, benches, and whatnot. There is $436,295 in the fiscal year 24-25 adopted budget for the landscape maintenance services. The new contract will include additional scope related to new infrastructure around the city, including the medians and right-of-ways on Nash Street over by the Charters facility, and also around the new monument sign at Main and Imperial. And additionally, the contractor, actually in the last several months, we've added scope for the contractor to provide some additional services in the Smoky Hollow area with regards to keeping the streets and gutters clean. In the past months, there have been a variety of park maintenance issues that have been identified by residents and other stakeholders in the community, which has resulted in a need for additional supervision of the contracted vendor's work. To address that, staff are now conducting daily inspections of major service areas to record and address any issues swiftly. Park maintenance staff are completing weekly inspections of all parks and recording information into a park maintenance matrix that is actually reviewed by the Recreation and Parks Commission at their monthly meetings. Moving ahead, I will be initiating monthly phone calls with the new landscape maintenance vendor to ensure issues are being addressed in a timely manner with minimal disruption to city services and programs. This all-hands-on-deck approach will hopefully elevate the overall quality of park maintenance through a collaborative effort of park staff, department administration, and our contracted vendor, with the ultimate goal being a park system that brings a great deal of pride to our residents. This slide here shows a schedule, a timeline of the RFP process. So as you can see, we hope to release the RFP tomorrow. and then conduct a mandatory pre-proposal meeting on February 19th. So that will be conducted with my park superintendent, Christopher, and his staff. Then we will initiate a question and response period, as is typical, from March 12th to March 26th, with proposals being due on April 30th. Then we hope to conduct interviews on May 5th and bring a contract back to the council on May 20th so that the contractor can begin performing work on June 1st. And that concludes my presentation. I do have my park superintendent, Christopher Henson, here to answer any specific questions you might have about the scope of services or other items related to the RFP.
Does the Imperial Strip include Memory Row, or are we allocating that to the old Tree Musketeers projects? Who has that within this contract?
Yes, Memory Row is included in the RFP. The whole Imperial Strip, Memory Row, the signage, the slope area towards the east, Clutter's Park, Dog Park, that's all included.
And are any of the changes to Clutter's Park addressed in this RFP, the cleaning, the upgraded cleaning? I saw it's daily on the playgrounds. Will be daily there, or excuse me, weekly on the playgrounds for power washing.
Yes, so currently our staff are taking care of the power washing at Clutter's Park. Is that correct, Christopher?
Yes, and you're talking about power washing the playgrounds as well?
Well, the playgrounds I saw in there, but I know that we had, because we've had resident complaints about Clutter's Park, we were allocating some more intensive cleaning and maintenance there.
Right, right. It happens to get a good deal of graffiti as well, and so that's on our radar right now.
And will Campus El Segundo, the maintenance, some of the things we've seen with lights and the field condition? I know that the fields are the fields covered in this are the natural grass fields. Is there is Campus El Segundo within the scope of this?
Just the landscape areas. The synthetic turf is handled by our staff.
Very well, thank you.
I don't know if this part of this RFP or if this is even the right form to bring this up, but our ball fields, our playing fields, the baseball field, the Stevenson, Brett, and Bobby Sox field, for lack of a better name for it. I think that's still the name. Softball field. So that is not part of this proposal. Am I correct on that?
Well, our staff, the city staff, does the infields maintenance, but the contractor does all the outfield mowing.
Okay, so in other words, at the girls softball field, which is all dirt, right? We rake the infield and someone cuts the outfield?
Correct.
Okay. First, I think that, number one, we're gonna, in your next budget, we have to account for the need to laser grade all three of those fields every year. Not every other year, every year. My understanding is the girls softball field did not get graded this year because it wasn't on, it was like on their off year. That is the most used field in this city. From softball to kickball to adult softball to everything. We only have 3 fields and they cannot go a year without being properly graded and all that stuff. And it takes money to do it. I'm saying I would put that in your budget to make sure that's done. It should not be every other year on any of those fields. To be honest with you, Stevenson probably gets the least amount of play in a yearly time period. Brett gets torn up because of AYSO and things like that, but the fields need to be laser graded properly. All right, we have 3 fields. They should be kind of gems of the city, and we need to take the proper courses to do that. Okay, thanks.
Further council comments?
I was going to make a comment about the mowing height measurement of the hibiscus grass versus the, no, it's fine. No, it's fine, it's fine. Happy to see such a detailed RFP. Glad to know that we're going to have reports so we know going forward that the quality will be there, and even happier to know it's going to go to the Parks and Rec Commission so they can be the watchdogs over this. So thanks for putting this together. It looks like a great idea, and I agree that we should be budgeting so that we can have our fields ready to play when we need them. Okay? What? That's it.
Was that a motion?
And with that, I shall move approval to authorize Parks and Rec and Library Department and the director to release a request for proposal for landscape maintenance services for all City of El Segundo parks.
Thank you.
I will second that.
Baldino and Giroux, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. 4-0. Item 11, the Smoky Hollow Parking Project, alleged alternatives. There's only one right answer, Elias.
And good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and members of the City Council. This is regarding the Smoky Hollow Parking Project Phase 2, and the presenter is Mr. Giuseppe Canzonieri with KOA. So I turn it over to Giuseppe. Here you go.
That might have been the first time you got my name right.
I practiced a lot of times.
Good evening, members of City Council. My name is Giuseppe Canzonieri with KOA. I've been working with Elias on this project for a few years now, but this is the hopefully the start of the Phase 2 of the Smoky Hollow parking project. So I've been up here almost a handful of times, but the project goals and objectives here were to implement the Smoky Hollow specific plan parking project, which includes the conversion of two-way streets to one-way streets and the inclusion of angled parking in an effort to increase parking capacity. This is straight out of the Smoky Hollow specific plan. This is the identification of all the one-way streets in the specific plan. I do want to note that from previous presentations, there's one change here where Center Street was removed from a one-way conversion, and that was removed out the direction of the Planning Commission at the November 14th, 2024 meeting. And that was mainly because Center Street serves as a main thoroughfare, and the opinion was that it would cause a more disruption than the conversion of all the other streets. So a little project timeline here. We started with Public Works on this project back in 2021, where we identified the pilot streets through just an analysis, a little bit more in-depth parking analysis than the specific plan went through. In 2022, we initiated the project design, which was followed by some community outreach, also getting input from City Council. In 2023, we completed the project design. We brought it forth to City Council for approval. We were given a thumbs up to implement it, and by the end of the year, the project was constructed for the three pilot streets. Last year, Public Works conducted some community outreach, getting some feedback on the pilot project, and re-engaged with KOA to start looking at a cost analysis for several different alternatives and expanding the project. And 2025, we're hopefully looking to initiate project design on the next phase. So the pilot project was constructed. Construction was completed December 2023. It included 3 streets in the area, which was California, Oregon, and Nevada streets. Total cost was about $225,000. That's inclusive of design, Elias? Design construction?
That did not include the design.
Okay,
So that
construction
was,
only.
yeah.
Thank you. And with this was a total of 5 segments of streets. Nevada and Oregon both had 2 blocks, and California had one block. But we had a 37% increase in parking on those streets. That was 37% would be an increase of 40 parking spots. So this is what the pilot, if you guys haven't seen it, this is what the pilot project looks like. It's a what we would call a quick build alternative. It's striping, signage, and bollards. While we were presenting at the Planning Commission meeting in November 2024, the topic of traffic calming and slowing down vehicles, came up, and it just so happened that the city was also conducting a citywide speed survey. Public Works contracted with that same engineer to add these 3 streets to their data collection just to see what the 85th percentile speed turned out to be. We don't have a baseline of the pre-project conditions as this came to mind afterwards, but we thought we'd at least share the data with you. I believe the streets are 25-mile-an-hour streets, and they're in and around the 25-mile-an-hour range there, except for Oregon. I mentioned that the city did some community outreach. So specifically on the pilot project, on their satisfaction of the pilot project, it was mostly satisfied, and of course, with any project, there's going to be some pros and cons, and people that like it, people that don't like it. But based on the responses, it was mostly well received. On the question of whether adequate parking spaces were provided, the majority said yes. Some other questions were asked in the survey about the expansion of the project, and what the questions included some of the alternatives that we were looking at that I'll present to you in a couple slides here, of adding permanent curb extensions instead of striping and bollards to put curb extensions in, street furniture, landscaping, and new pavement and striping. And the responses came back mostly positive for those. So moving on to the expansion, this table here actually was prepared a couple years ago when we did a little bit more in-depth analysis of the projected parking spots and increases along all the streets that were that were slated for, or that were identified for one-way street conversion. The last 5 there, Nevada, Oregon, California, that's all part of the pilot project, and everything above that would be included in the second phase of that. Mostly increases.
Why would we restripe Penn if it's going to lose a spot? I mean, it could still be part of the one-way, but does it make sense to remove parking if our net loss is 1 spot by putting in diagonals?
Well, if you restripe it from one way,
I mean, you could have a one-way to have continuity, so people can get to the other streets, because that's the circulation pattern. But if it's going to remove a spot in the name of putting in a diagonal,
it's something that can be looked at a little bit further. Again, this was a little bit more in depth analysis than the specific plan. Once you get into actually drawing it and figuring out, where to put things and where to shorten this, where to lengthen that, might be able to make up that spot. So phase 2 project costs, we were tasked to look at 4 different options. The first option was a quick build option, which is similar to what the pilot project is, with sign striping and curb extensions that were with paint and bollards. Looking at an approximate cost with design and construction, about $850,000, with an approximate schedule of 1 year. The second option was, and by the way, all these options kind of build up upon each other. The second option would be to do permanent curb extensions with concrete curb and gutter and sidewalk. This now goes up to about $5 million with an approximate 1.5-year schedule. Option number 3 was the same as option number 2, except it included roadway rehabilitation, which increased the cost by about $1.3 million to $6.3. And the last option was option 3 plus various landscaping and irrigation improvements, giving you about a project cost of about $6.6 million. So how are you going to pay for this? So the city has already applied for a Measure M multi-year sub-regional program grant through SBC COG. Another option is to earmark future local return transportation funds such as Measure M, Measure R, and the gas tax towards the project. But that could take several years to actually accrue the funds needed for this. And lastly is the general fund. And lastly, to the recommendations, staff is recommending to authorize staff to proceed with alternative 1, which is the quick build option. And 2 would be to direct staff to return to City Council to consider other alternatives if the SBC COG grant is not awarded. Or 3, alternatively, discuss and take other action related to this item.
Council questions and comments?
I've seen this already, so I've asked all my questions.
Councilmember Giroux.
You've asked your questions, but haven't heard them. So what are your questions?
Well, we spent more time talking about which option would be the most desirable. So that's not exactly part of this. I mean, we went full tilt. Yeah, absolutely. Throw in the landscaping, max it out, because funding was theoretical. So that was our conversation. The Center Street conversation, I mean, I can kind of remember and give some color to that, but it was exactly, I think it was then Vice Chair, now Chair Heschler, commenting that that's a thoroughfare or used as such off of El Segundo Boulevard, so it might be confusing and throw things off to go from the, to make that one way coming off of El Segundo Boulevard.
So I think we talked about this, the funding mechanism, we're going to apply for a grant. We hope we get it, right?
Correct.
We do not have 858,000, or what is it, 868,000? What was it on that slide? I'm sorry, I forgot the number. The option 1 was
858.
I'm assuming we don't have $858,000 set aside for this, or we do?
We have not set that aside, although we could plan it for this upcoming CIP project.
Okay.
Is there anything on the in lieu
Yeah, I
funding?
was just gonna say that.
No, I checked.
We used that all for the first
yes,
phase.
we used that for the pilot project, I'm afraid.
So the entire parking in lieu fund is depleted?
Correct.
On a pilot program?
One of the hard parts, right, is that you have such little head count in those places
Right.
that they just don't generate the parking requirements and in lieu's.
If I could just add to the discussion too, the process on the COG Metro grant is a little over a year. So that to play itself out, to know if we're going to get that grant or not.
Right.
And I think it's coming back to me a little bit. The conversation about, so if we spend the 858, but ultimately we're going to spend 6 point whatever, are we essentially throwing away the 800,000 plus? What of that can be incorporated and salvaged into the bigger budget?
Yeah, that's kind of my issue is if you tell me it's going to be 858, it's going to be like 1.2, and it's a temporary Ballard, it's painting without improving the streets, without doing the landscaping. So I think we owe it to the city to basically say, like, 1, we don't have the 858. 2, we can extend this pilot program for a year and try to save funds to get the 858, worst case scenario, right? Then at least we've got more parking. But ideally, we're going to want to do the whole package. We're going to want to, and it's not just about parking, it's about pedestrian safety, it's about traffic calming. These are all words that we could use to get grants, and if it's piecemeal grants, and let's take our time and do it. But we're a city with a long list of capital improvements, parks and recs that get a lot more use than adding a couple parking spots in Smoky Hollow. So I like the pilot program. I've received great comments from folks who live over there who have emailed and taken the time and said this is great. But if we're going to implement it, I'd like to do it right. So my suggestion would be is that we don't authorize the spending of any additional funds right now. We've got a plan. Let's pursue the grant.
Yes.
Get the 6.6 is probably going to be 7.2 when we're all said and done. But if we can get the grant fund, let's do it all at once. Let's do it all right. Let's make it look nice and improve the look of the city. And then in the interim, maybe we can save up so that we can do this option one. But option one is, you know, it's temporary. It doesn't have the quality that the city deserves. If we're going to do something and fix a problem, I think we should do it right. If we can get someone else to pay for it, even better.
Right.
So that's my 2 cents.
I would say a slightly different take on it. One, I think that we're dead on to apply for Alternative 4 under Measure M funding. I mean, go get our sales tax dollars and bring it back. And it will take a year, but we just gave a bunch of money back to that program. So I don't foresee, given all of the attributes of this, that we'll have trouble getting that grant. I think we'll be incredibly competitive for that. But in the near term, this is a part of the city that is at 0% vacancy. There are people clamoring to move into that area, to bring their businesses into that area. And the only thing that forestalls them is finding a spot to set their laptop up in and finding a place to park. So with that 0% availability, I think that even a somewhat inglamorous solution in an industrial part of the city with white striping is worth it. I really do. I don't know, you know, I have the balance sheet. I don't know what's likely to come out of our budget review and see if there's $858,000 nickels in the couch that we can scrape together to at least get the thing started. And certainly would take a while to do it. I mean, if we approved it now, we wouldn't start spending money and buying paint for 6 months. But I know that is a vibrant area that is clamoring for further access. And so I would accept risk on Alternative 1 and then wait for Alternative 4 to come in. And $6.6 million worth of concrete, is it possible? It's possible. I don't know if it'll be as overshot as another $500,000 over, but I think we're likely to have Alternative 4 come in the next 24 months to beautify things and catch up. And the luxury of doing it with paint and bollards is much like our very first increment of Phase 1. If there's part we don't like our parallel parking spots on El Segundo Boulevard, we can just, show up with turpentine in the middle of the night and make them go away. So I think that there's a luxury to doing it with chalk paint and bollards at the front end if we want to make some adjustments. So I would strongly advocate proceeding with number 1, almost on those recommendations, 1 and 2. I wouldn't earmark or encumber future Measure M, but I would apply under a current grant.
Can you go back to the slide that talks about how many parking spaces we're gaining, please?
This one?
Yes.
Yeah, this is for all of
57.
Yeah.
So what's 858,000 divided by 57?
We don't do math right here.
I don't do it in my head.
So 57 would be the total increase.
The total increase. Right. So I'm just saying if we spent Alternative 1 and spent that amount, we would be getting 57 more.
Well, you've already gotten 40.
We've gotten 40.
This is the whole Smoky
That's
Hollow area.
everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the remainder of it would be starting at Standard Street, Eucalyptus, Sheldon, Penn, Sierra, Lomita, and Maryland. So if you add all of that up, that should be the remaining 17, I think.
I mean, it's too much per stall, I think.
Yeah, actually, Chris, I understand what you're saying because you do have, it is a vibrant area. I guess one of the challenges I have is you kind of mentioned that it's still going to take 6, 7 months. First of all, we have to find the money in the budget, right? So that's going to come up in the next budget, which is July. All right, so you're still talking 6 months out already. When do we estimate we would get an answer on the actual funding?
You mean the response from the grant, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, about a year from now.
Okay, so you're talking about technically a 6-month delta. So if we went ahead and spent the money and then 6 months later get the grant, we just kind of blew $858,000. Because we would basically tear up everything we just put down.
Yeah, the other advantage of doing the project as suggested, recommended, if any piece doesn't work with bollards and paint, we could take it out. So, that would give us some more, if you would, some time to digest, make sure everything is working okay before we pour concrete.
But inevitably, what we're saying is,
you're right.
we're going to pull up the 858,000 to lay down if we get. Now, what I'm saying is, if for some reason we don't get the grant, we can always kind of figure out the budget for the 858. You know what I'm saying? So it's I don't think I think this is worth waiting to see what we can do to do a bigger job. I do understand what you're saying. I agree with you, Chris. But I think on a bigger scheme of things, we're talking about a 6-month delta there.
Right. Just one point of clarification, if I may. The amount of grant that we are seeking is $8 million because we threw the cost of the construction management, design, and all of that, and also inflation, but with the 25% participation. Because if we put 0 participation, there would be very small chance of getting the grant. So even if we land that $8 million grant money, we still have to be able to provide 25%, which is $2 million, about 1/4 of the grant funding.
There's very few things that cities can directly control when it comes to vibrance in an area, and parking and that piece of land use is a valuable tool. And I know it's a big chunk of money for those spaces, but we typically charge downtown. What's the cost of a downtown space for the in-lieu fee? We charge $18,500 per space, and with a lot more than this.
But this is 17, we already have the 40, right? This is 17 extra spaces, so it's $50,000 a space.
When we agreed to put the phase 1 piece in, even with the 9 spots on El Segundo Boulevard we got rid of, part and parcel with that was no sooner had we done that than those spots at 1325 East El Segundo decided to retrofit and put a parking garage in anticipation of there being growth. So there's 400 spots that were created. Those are private spots. Those aren't ours to touch. But there is a network effect, for lack of a better term, that it creates when we support people moving into an area. And there's some spots there that are just hanging on. Some of the old legacy industries that are just holding on almost because they just are the last places to park. So I think that this is a real choke point that we control, and I think it would make sense for us to really address it. And I know that phase 1 only went in 2021, but we approved it in 2018. So these things do take a while.
They do.
No, Chris, I hear what you're saying. I appreciate the points you're making, and this is an important and highly impacted area for the city that's drawing a lot of attention. I just would rather not spend money we don't have on hand already, and I think it's worth waiting a year to see if we can get the grant, because I'd rather roll out the premium and upgrade the entire area than spend money for $850 and then have to undo it later. So my recommendation would be, basically come back in 6 months. If we have the grant, great. Start saving your nickels now or allocating, because it's, if we don't get the grant, we still may want to invest. Maybe not alternative 4, but alternative 3. And really kind of swing for the fences and improve this area that's been neglected for a long time. And those streets need to be improved. Those alleys are in bad shape.
Well, some of those alleys we just did. We did 3 of those alleys to accommodate trucks. So we are supporting growth in that area.
Yes.
And again, we are at 0% vacancy. That is a cuckoo pants crazy number to say. And I'm not sure that's a doctrinal term in development. I've never been on the planning commission. But I mean, we really have an opportunity to support that. And there are, for instance, speaking of Center Street, right, the large facility just north of the storage. I mean, that's going to go through a retrofit and have 80 employees in there. They don't have on, I don't know how they're going to park them all. Maybe they're going to park inside the warehouse. But there is a ton of interest in retrofit and renovation. And if we wait too long, if we approve in 6 months, so we're at the 18-month mark before the first diagonal spot goes in, we really hazard some of that. So again, I'm not going to belabor it.
we have an even number of people, so I see, my chances of success are limited as is. But because I will go down to the ship, I will move approval of the Smoky Hollow Project Alternative with Alternative 1, followed by an application for Measure M fundings for Alternative 4. And I will entertain a second. This is how they treat me, Madam Clerk. They didn't do this with the last clerk. Very well. We'll progress unmoved on item 11.
So
Do we have direction, though, to come back in 6 months and reevaluate this?
Yeah, can you come back, start saving your pennies? No,
Sure.
we want to go big,
We will.
right? We want to make it look great out there. We want to help our businesses as best we can, but
We'll take that great. We'll show Mr. Good. Great will be crush that good. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
All right, committees, commissions, board presentation. We had ours, so the first report will be to you, Madam Clerk.
I'm so excited to let you know that I will be spending Thursday and Friday in Brea doing a nuts and bolts training with the California City Clerks Association. So I will find out so many more things to come and apply.
Make sure to tell everyone you work for the best city in the world.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. They have the best clerk, from what I
Yep.
heard, and staff.
Yep.
Yeah, 100%.
Just don't tell them how you let me down on item 11. Councilmember Keldor.
I do not have anything.
Very well. Councilmember Giroux.
Actually, all of us, I think, today had an opportunity to see the kind of little walkthrough on the plunge rebuild right now, and it was fun, actually, to see the bare bones of something like that. I know, Ryan, that's like your purview. You see that stuff all the time, but for me, it was very new. And it's a gigantic space when there's nothing in it, so it was really impressive to kind of peel back and see the old pipes and things like that were in there and the changes that are being made. So it should be exciting, and I think they're on pace for the end of the year right now. So anyway, things are picking up, but it was fun, and thanks to staff for setting that up. It was nice to see it.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Baldino.
Yeah, we had our aquatics meeting on the 27th of January, and our agenda is going to include now the schedule for the plunge as well as a list of change orders for the costs, so that we're trying to be very transparent about what's going on out there. As you know from touring it, things aren't built the way we thought they were, so there's going to be a lot of things that are going to change out there. There's a lot of unknowns. Right now, our change orders are roughly $530,000, but this is because one item was a $95,000 upcharge because we had to expedite the ordering of the switchgear, which is on the critical path. And this is just because of the demand in the market. If we didn't pay the money to get it delivered, we wouldn't have anything to hook up, and we would be way behind schedule. Another item was that the transformer at the old plunge was never included in the original bid, and that change order is about $238,000. So two of the largest change orders. Everything else has been pretty small. We didn't know a wall was here. But again, those documents are being reported at the aquatic subcommittee. Those agendas are being published if anyone has any concerns about that. I want to also point on the consent calendar. We again approved the repairs to the aquatic center. The aquatic center will be closed July and August of 2025. User groups have been notified, but just make sure people know that we're making plans for that. On the 30th, I went to a ribbon cutting for TMC Capital here in El Segundo. This is a company that focuses on micro lending. So think about your street vendors or your taco cart entrepreneur who doesn't have credit cards, doesn't have financial information to go the regular bank route and would probably just get a high interest credit card. This is a company that focuses on that market. They only lend under $50,000. Most of the loans are $17,000, and they're partnering with banks in El Segundo to kind of grow this program throughout California. So I was happy to welcome them to our town and thank them for their work. And then a reminder that we have applications out for Planning Commission. We have applications out for the DEI subcommittee. I encourage people to get involved and apply and interview for these committees and subcommittees because they're a vital part of what we do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Baldino. A few items from mine before I get to
my agenda items. First, on Tuesday, we will have the COG Transportation Subcommittee meeting where we will go through and have the different cities will weigh in on the matching fund policy. It sounds dry. It's a big deal. There's hundreds of millions of dollars at play. We tried to do it last month. We did not have a quorum. So we sent out the hue and cry, and we'll have, I think, a significant number of cranky people there. And they'll typically do this face, as Elias knows. $18 million. But there, yeah, so we'll go through that piece. Also, we should have presentations on it in the subsequent months in March and April for different innovations that are seeking to relieve pressure on the 710 corridor. So it's autonomous rail stuff, it's rail to road stuff. It should be pretty interesting in that regard. Sanitation, we'll meet in 2 weeks. We had sanitation meeting last week. The important piece of that touches us, one, the federal funding mechanisms that we thought that both LA City Sanitation and LA County Sanitation would receive for design on what we call the Clearwater projects, the big water recycling projects that each one will be about $9 billion, to the $100 million worth of federal funding is now in question. So that would hold up design significantly. And if that had to go to the ratepayer instead of a grant, that's a significant issue. Also, we learned that LA City Sanitation's plan for that is probably at least 5 years behind LA County Sanitation. So that's a bummer to learn, because although we are a part of LA County Sanitation, we obviously have a significant interest in LA City Sanitation. Also, we got an update that the litigation that we're party to over there has been appealed to the state Supreme Court. And lastly, we put similarly an RFP out for a general counsel for LA County Sanitation. Why that's interesting is this would be the only 5th different general counsel in the history of the LA County Sanitation District. So in 100 years, they've had 4 engineers and 5 general counsels. Kind of remarkable. AQMD, we will have a vote, the all-city selection piece. You probably all saw an email that city selection will vote on Thursday on candidates for AQMD. If they get a quorum, I think, about 25% of the time, but we show up. Went to the Resilient Engineering Conference for cities. What was really neat there was in a room full of a few hundred people with presentations. 7 of them were El Segundo companies or people. So in the world of like all things innovative lead to El Segundo, I mean, it was kind of crazy. Some guy I never sat behind was like, I'm at El Segundo, here's what we do. I was like, oh, look at you. With your full head of hair and your nice suit. But yeah, he represented us well, I did not. Okay, lastly, my 2 important items. Well, important to me. One, I wanted to get some council direction on the first, and for the people watching at home, when the default setup when you incorporate a city in California as a general law city, and we all know this, general law cities come with their own shape and stipulation, and it's not always the best fit. So every few years we flirt with the idea of, should we put a charter out to decide how we want to run the city? And charters, in my understanding, I'm not a lawyer, do not have to be overly complicated. Our charter could say we want to continue with the general norms of a general law city with the following exceptions, things like that. But there are some privileges that you get from a charter that say, look, these are how we want to exercise this different structures or pieces of it. It's certainly not uncommon in the area. Culver City is a charter city, Santa Monica, San Diego, big cities, little cities, all kinds of cities like to do it that way. I thought it's interesting for us to explore just because we talk about it all the time. We could certainly make some changes to our shape and structure that are best fit, but I did not want to encumber staff with a series of reports to do and homework assignments if there wasn't broader interest. So I know we can't take a vote, but I just thought I'd open that up to a piece of discussion.
I know there was some court case that they gave some more zoning latitude to a charter city over a general law city. I'm pretty sure Sacramento is going to enact a law to undo that. But just to give us more control locally, I'm happy to have City Attorney come back with pros and cons. I think it'd be a good discussion to have.
And to be clear, if we did want to do this, it would go to the voters. So we would start the planning now to put it on a general election ballot. All right, I will take that as we would like to put that on a future agenda to study that. Secondly, Measure C, which passed with 80% plus of the votes. Measure C was designed, in my mind, to solve for a very specific legal construct about how the county could raise our sales tax. Through a carve-out from an assembly member in West LA, they have maneuvered around that, and to my mind, make Measure C no longer irrelevant. And if we, philosophically for me, if we would like a revenue measure to the people of El Segundo, then it deserves a fair vote. And in my mind, Measure C was an assurance from them that we were protecting them from undue capture of their sales tax, and it's no longer relevant. So I, in the similar measure, my last one, or similar thoughts from my last one, would like to gauge interest in putting Measure C on the ballot to repeal. And if anyone wants to do a separate revenue measure, that would be a separate and appropriate piece. But Measure C, the pretense by which it was passed, I find no longer relevant.
We can't debate this topic right now.
No, it's not
right?
debate. Like, is
It's a
there?
matter of whether there's interest in the council. I mean, it's on the agenda for you to discuss whether or not you want to give direction to potentially move forward with what the mayor's proposing.
Gotcha.
We would come back with,
So I gotta be careful how I phrase this then, right? All right.
no, I mean,
So, we've talked about this before, and I do not find any reason why we should repeal something that was voted on by the voters and we have in our hand to utilize if we see fit to do so or as needed. We had the opportunity to enact it and we didn't, based on kind of what you're talking about, that it was not the true spirit of what the ballot measure was. But I don't see any benefit to us to take it off the board. So I would be against that.
That's my question, I guess, what happens if it's not rescinded? Can it live out there forever? Do we have a time clock? Is there something, do we have to make a move on Measure C?
no, it's there, and given what transpired at the county, any council at any time could impose the 0.75% sales tax that's allowed to be imposed under that measure. This council so far has chosen not to do that, but this council or any other council in the future could impose that sales tax. There's about I think a 3 to 6 month, 3-month lag to get it imposed, approximately. So when I say they can, I mean, you could, but it'll take about 3 months to actually start collecting money.
I just think it's toxic to people's faith in government. We looked them in the eye and gave them, here are the rules of the game, and we're constructing something to play within these rules of the game. The rules of the game changed, and now we're like, well, aha, gotcha. You know, this money's out there and we could take it from you at any time. I think it is the more appropriate decision as an earnest governing body to discard the ill-fitting measure, and then if we wanted one, let them have a vote on a revenue measure under the current rules of the game. That was my thinking.
But I think if we leave it as is, suspended, the next time the county does go to put on a tax measure, it may not have the same loophole runaround that we dealt with last time, where we were actually going up to like 10.25. So I think we can trust council to know that the point of Measure C was to, if we're going to have to increase the sales tax and that money's going to disappear into the county, keep it here. We'd rather the city impose first, use those funds for our first responders and our parks and everything. So unless, I don't see the need to put it on the ballot to absolutely repeal it, especially since it hasn't been enforced. And I think it's because council wants to enact the will of the people, which is, we're only going to tax you more if that money, if you're already going to pay a tax and it's getting shipped out to the county, it's going to disappear.
Very well. I applaud your faith in future councils. I will remain dubious. So I think that we have direction on 12 to go ahead. 13, I will write in my diary right below the Brian Schottenheimer hire by the Cowboys. I know, he played at Blue Valley Stillwell against me in high school. He's terrible. City Attorney, reports.
Nothing this evening, thank you.
City Manager?
Yes, Mayor, just a couple of things. First, before I give a brief Hyperion update, kind of like the walkthrough of the plunge, the renovated and remodeled plunge. Yesterday, the police chief and I took a tour of the remodeled, I believe it was the ArcLight Theater that was in the city, which is now going to be called the Cinema West Beach Cities. Did an amazing job. 1,200 seats, I think, scaled down from 2,400 the past go-around. Beautiful state-of-the-art equipment. One screen is 180 degrees. Another one is has all the, it's called 4DX, where you sit in the chair and it rocks, and if it's raining in the theater. So it's really pretty spectacular. I believe they're having a soft opening next week, and will officially open the end of next week. So, regarding Hyperion, just very little to report. Over the last 2 weeks, AQMD said they received 17 odor complaints, with a single-day high of 5 complaints on January 29th. The facility was issued a notice of violation on January 23rd for failing to timely notify AQMD of a power outage they had. So yes, they had a power outage on January 23rd, and it impacted some equipment in the truck loadout area. And then on January 28th, bulkheads were installed in primary battery C in preparation for a gate replacement. So that's a brief Hyperion report at this point.
City Manager, I forgot one thing. If there's any interest in serving on any of the elected boards, if you look in your email, you'll have something from the COG with opportunities to serve on SCAG administrative boards around economic development, housing, and things like that. With that, we do have a memorial to end for the first time we've had in quite some time. So Joan Kelly, age 96, El Segundo, California, passed away peacefully on December 18th, 2024. She was born in Dublin, Ireland, and Joan met and married the love of her life, Christy, in Dublin, and they were happily married for 64 years. In 1957, Christy and Joan and their young son, Hugh, immigrated to the United States, and in 1960, settled in El Segundo. In 1970, Joan started one of the first Irish dance schools in the Los Angeles area, the Kelly School of Traditional Irish Dance, and taught more than 1,000 students the art of Irish dancing throughout the South Bay. 54 years later, the Kelly School still thrives with Joan's twin daughters, Carol Pierstuck and Claire Maxwell, as teachers. When Joan was actively teaching and a dancer took the stage with beautiful trebles and a hornpipe, people would say, "Now that is a Kelly dancer." Joan is survived by her children, Hugh, Imelda, Claire, and Carol, and 8 grandchildren, Chris, Brian, John, Michaela, Jessica, Emily, Isabel, and Samantha. And she's preceded in death by her granddaughter, Kara, and husband, Christy. Her family was the joy and light of her life, and at 96, Joan would still attend a FICE or two and always would love to hear a dancer perform the hornpipe. I cannot read the following Gaelic, but I will say, in life, always loved, and in death, not forgotten.